Hello everyone, and welcome to tonight's tranquil journey through history. As the comforting crackle of the fire fills the air, we leave behind the noise of modern life and step back in time, a time when survival was a constant struggle and the elements were both ally and enemy. Picture yourself in a Viking longhouse where the warmth of the fire flickers softly in front of you, while the harsh, biting wind howls outside, freezing the land beyond. Here, in the warmth of the fire, we are safe, for now, but beyond these walls, life is a battle against the cold and the unforgiving wild. Before we begin, if you enjoy these quiet escapes into history, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, and feel free to leave a comment below. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is in your part of the world. It's always a joy to see how far these calming stories travel. Now, settle in, dim the lights, and let the gentle warmth of the fire guide you as we journey through a day in the life of a Viking. A life spent more often in the biting cold than by the feast table, yet always driven by the unyielding will to survive. No rush tonight, just the steady, relentless rhythm of Viking life as the fire crackles and the night unfolds. As we step outside the warmth of the longhouse, the world beyond is a stark contrast. The cold hits us immediately, a sharp, biting chill that cuts through any fabric and sinks deep into the bones. Snow stretches endlessly before us, blanketing the earth in a thick, unbroken layer of white. The sky, a dull shade of grey, seems heavy, as though it too feels the weight of the cold. The air is still, but you can almost feel it holding its breath, waiting. The land is silent. There's no bustling life here, no chatter or footsteps of busy villagers. Only the occasional sound of the wind howling through the trees, its icy fingers reaching across the landscape, sending waves of snow swirling in all directions. You can almost hear the quiet crunch of your own boots as they sink into the soft snow beneath. The only signs of life are the tracks of wild animals, perhaps a deer or a fox, etched lightly in the snow, a fleeting reminder that even in this harsh, frozen world, life still clings on. But these creatures, much like the Vikings, must remain ever vigilant, always on the move, never truly safe. The cold is relentless here. It doesn't let up, doesn't give respite. The landscape feels alive with its own quiet intensity, as if the frozen world is watching you, waiting for the next step, the next challenge. The land itself has shaped the Vikings, moulded them into survivors, for only those who endure the harshest conditions can call this place home. And yet, despite the relentless chill, there's a beauty to it. The snow, undisturbed and pure, reflects the pale light of the sky, casting a soft, ethereal glow across the frozen landscape. The air feels sharp and clean, as if it's purging the soul with every breath you take. There's something mesmerizing about the stillness, the way the land holds its breath, as if it's suspended in time, untouched, unchanging. In this frozen world, time moves differently. The harshness of the cold demands a slower pace, a more deliberate way of living. There's no room for haste here, no space for distractions. Life moves as steadily as the snowflakes that fall one after another, endlessly without hurry. But, of course, for the Viking, the cold isn't just a nuisance. It's a companion. It's something they know intimately, something they've learned to survive and even thrive in. Each gust of wind, each layer of snow is a test, a challenge to be met with resolve. It's no wonder that the Vikings, though often surrounded by such frozen desolation, are driven by the same relentless force that fuels this unforgiving land. As the fire crackles behind us, we are reminded that we are still safe, for now. But out there, in the vast expanse of snow and ice, life goes on, quietly, persistently, and without pause. The day begins before the first light of dawn, when the world outside still lies shrouded in darkness, the air cold and heavy with the promise of another harsh day. Inside the longhouse, warmth radiates from the fire, though it is faint and flickering in the stillness of the early hours. The scent of wood smoke lingers, filling the room with the comforting smell of a hearth that has seen countless mornings. You awaken to the sound of the fire crackling softly in the corner, the low hum of the house alive with the slow stirring of the night's embers. The cold from the outside presses against the wooden walls, but inside it's just enough to make the warmth from the fire feel all the more precious. Stretching, you rise from your bed, a simple mattress of fur and cloth, and make your way to the hearth. The fire, still a bit sleepy, greets you with a small crackle as you stoke it to life. The warmth slowly spreads, bringing comfort to your cold limbs. But it's a momentary relief, for there is work to be done, and the day doesn't wait. Outside, the wind continues to howl, but inside the longhouse, the flickering flames and soft murmurs of early risers fill the air. The first tasks of the day await, and they are as steady as the rhythm of the seasons. You step over to the table, where a simple breakfast awaits, perhaps some dried fish, a hunk of bread, and a bowl of watered-down milk. It's not much, but it's enough to sustain you. As you eat, there's a quiet conversation around you, the low murmur of family members preparing for the tasks ahead. One of the women sharpens a knife with practiced skill, while a man polishes his axe, the sound of metal against stone filling the room. The morning ritual is simple, but it's purposeful. Every task is a small step in the preparation for the long day ahead. Once breakfast is finished, the house begins to stir more vigorously. The children, bundled in thick furs, head outside to tend to the animals, their small feet crunching in the snow as they move toward the pens. The men and women gather their tools and prepare for the day's work, whether it's hunting in the forest, gathering firewood, or mending the longship. In a world like this, there is no time for idle moments. Each day brings its own demands, whether it's the urgency of securing enough firewood to last through another night, or the need to check traps set for small game in the surrounding woods. Every action is a quiet reminder of the struggle to survive, and the Vikings understand this instinctively. There's always something to be done, always something that must be prepared for the long, cold months ahead. The day moves on slowly, methodically, as the Vikings work together in the constant hum of activity. The tasks, while mundane, are necessary. But even in these simple routines, there's a sense of unity, of shared purpose. A quiet camaraderie binds everyone here, a bond forged by the simple, unrelenting need to survive and thrive in a world that does not wait for anyone. As the sun, or what little light there is, rises higher, the temperature outside drops even further. But inside, amidst the steady rhythm of daily life, there's a sense of calm. The work doesn't stop, but neither does the warmth of the fire, and as the day unfolds, there's a quiet beauty in the simplicity of it all. As the days grow shorter and the sun seems to slip away faster, the long winter settles over the land like a heavy blanket. The cold seeps into every crack and crevice, settling into the bones of the earth. The snow, which had started as a gentle dusting, now covers everything, blanketing the trees, the roofs of the longhouses, and the frozen ground in a soft, silent white. Inside the longhouse, the warmth of the fire becomes the only solace from the unrelenting chill that gnaws at the door, but even the fire, though comforting, cannot keep the cold at bay forever. The air inside is thick with the scent of wood smoke, the quiet hum of the house's activity, mending, crafting, and preparing. Here, it is not just the fire that keeps you warm, it's the sense of community, the shared understanding that winter is a time for survival. The days are long and monotonous, stretching out before you, each one the same as the last. The sun's feeble light barely breaks through the thick grey clouds that seem to hang low in the sky, never quite leaving. In this world of ice and snow, the Viking people have learned to make do with what little they have. There is no room for excess here. Every scrap of food, every piece of wood, every bit of cloth is carefully rationed and preserved. The animals, too, must adapt. The chickens, pigs, and cows are kept in the warmth of the longhouse, where the cold outside seems to be a distant memory. But even they are not immune to the winter's bite. Their food supply, like the humans, dwindles steadily as the season drags on. The stored grains and dried fish are the lifeline that keeps everyone alive. There's a careful balancing act in every meal, ensuring that there's enough to last until the thaw comes, whenever that might be. For the Vikings, winter is not a time of leisure or feasting. It is a time for preparation, for endurance, and for making the most of what little they have. When the snow falls heavily and the wind howls outside, the Viking women spin wool and weave cloth, creating blankets and garments to keep everyone warm. The men check the traps they've set in the forest for small game, or venture out to the nearby rivers to break through the ice and fish. There is a sense of camaraderie in the long winter, a quiet solidarity in knowing that no one can survive alone. The tasks may be small and repetitive, but they are necessary. And as the winter days stretch on, there is a shared understanding that you are not just surviving the season, you are waiting for the return of warmth, for the moment when the earth will thaw and life can begin anew. Outside, the wind howls, but inside the longhouse the fire crackles steadily, the warmth it offers filling the room as the Vikings go about their quiet work. There's a sense of time standing still here, as if the world has slowed down in the grip of winter, each day marked only by the passing of light, the flicker of the fire, and the sound of the wind outside. And though it may seem endless, the Viking people know that this long winter will eventually give way to the first signs of spring. The cold, though fierce, is not forever. But until that moment comes, they endure side by side in the quiet rhythm of survival. Step inside the Viking longhouse and you're immediately greeted by a sense of warmth and welcome. The chill from the outside world seems to dissolve the moment you cross the threshold. The thick, heavy wooden walls creak and groan against the wind, but inside, it's a different world entirely. A world defined by the crackling warmth of the hearth and the steady rhythm of life. The house is built from solid wood and stone, a testament to the Vikings' craftsmanship and the harsh world they inhabit. The walls, darkened by years of smoke and time, are sturdy, their beams thick and strong. The roof, sloping gently like the back of a great beast, is made of thatch and wood, designed to withstand the weight of the snow in winter and the heat of the summer sun. It's not the most elegant structure, but it is a home in every sense of the word, built with purpose and resilience. In the centre of it all, the heart of the home, is the large fire pit. The flames dance and crackle, their orange glow reflecting off the stone and wood. The fire, though simple, provides more than just heat. It's a gathering point, the place where the family comes together after a long day. It's the warmth in the cold, the light in the dark. The aroma of burning wood fills the air, mixing with the scent of cooking meats and the earthy smell of wool and fur. Around the fire, the space feels alive. The flickering light casts shadows on the walls, creating a dance of movement that makes the room feel intimate, cozy. The Viking longhouse may be a simple structure, but here, by the fire, it feels like the world is still. The cold winds outside seem a distant memory as you sit in the warmth of the room, feeling the heat from the fire seep into your bones. The floor is covered with straw and animal furs, providing a soft cushion against the hard earth beneath. Mats are spread out, some of them decorated with intricate patterns and designs, works of art crafted by the Viking women who wove them in the quieter moments of the day. The walls hold shelves filled with weapons, tools, and even the occasional trophy from a successful hunt. Everything has its place in this small, cozy space. Nothing is wasted. As you look around, you notice the practical nature of everything. There's no room for excess here. Each piece of furniture, each tool, is made with care and designed to serve a specific purpose. The benches lining the walls are simple but sturdy, offering places to sit, eat, and rest. The shelves are neatly arranged, filled with dried herbs, meats, and other supplies to get through the winter. Yet, despite the simplicity, there's a comforting sense of community here. It's clear that this home is not just a shelter, but a sanctuary, an anchor in a world that can be harsh and unpredictable. The hearth is the heart of the home, where stories are told, where laughter rings out, and where even the most difficult days can be softened by the warmth and togetherness that fills the room. As the wind howls outside, you can hear it faintly through the cracks in the wood, but inside, all that matters is here. The fire, the family, and the comfort of knowing that for tonight at least, you are safe. The cold may rage outside, but within these walls there is warmth, both physical and emotional, a reminder that even in the harshest of winters, home is where the heart is. As the morning light barely pierces the thick grey sky, a sense of unease hangs in the air. The wind picks up, starting as a soft whistle that quickly grows into a low, mournful howl. It's the sound of the storm coming, and when the Viking warriors hear it, they know it's time to prepare. The snow, which had been gently falling the night before, now begins to swirl and twist, carried by the winds that seem to come from every direction. The longhouse, solid and steady against the elements, feels suddenly small in the face of what's to come. The fire, which had been the heart of warmth just moments ago, flickers in the wind. Outside, the world is already disappearing under a veil of white, the snow thick and blinding, the horizon lost somewhere beyond the next gust of wind. In moments like this, there is no time for hesitation. The Vikings, accustomed to the unpredictable nature of winter, immediately begin their preparations. The men check their weapons, securing their axes and swords. The women gather what supplies they can, making sure the firewood is stacked high and the animals are brought inside. It's a delicate balance of ensuring the warmth of the longhouse holds out against the storm, while preparing for the worst. Outside, the storm rages in full force now. The wind bites at your skin, carrying the snow in heavy sheets that sting the eyes. The snow piles up quickly, making the path to the forest barely visible, and the world around you becomes a blur of white. There's no way of telling which direction you've come from or where you're going. The storm is a force that erases all landmarks. But the Vikings are no strangers to such trials. They have learned, through years of living in the harshest of conditions, how to face such storms with patience and resilience. They know that the storm will pass. It always does. But, until then, they must endure, and endure they do. The men, tasked with checking the traps and securing food, press on through the blinding snow. Every step is a battle, fighting against the wind that pushes back with each footfall, against the cold that numbs fingers and toes, against the endless drifts that seem to swallow up any sign of the world they knew just moments before. But they do not stop. They press forward, knowing that without the hunt they would not survive the storm's full fury. Inside the longhouse, the women keep the fire alive, stoking the embers, adding wood to the flames. They work in silence, their faces set in determination, their movements efficient and calm. There is no panic, only a quiet focus on the task at hand. It's in times like these that their strength is most evident, not in loud declarations, but in the steady, persistent actions that keep life going, even when the world outside seems to be unraveling. Hours pass, though it's hard to tell time in the midst of the storm. The wind howls like a beast at the door, the snow pushing against the walls, but inside, the longhouse remains a bastion of warmth and safety. The storm may rage outside, but within these walls life persists. The fire crackles, the sound of the storm muffled by the solid wood and stone of the house. People gather near the hearth, their faces illuminated by the warm glow, sharing stories and small comforts as they wait for the storm to run its course. It's moments like this that test the Vikings. The storm is a reminder of the unforgiving nature of the world they live in, but it is also a reminder of their strength, their ability to face adversity without faltering. They may not control the weather, but they know how to survive it, and survive they will, until the winds die down and the snow begins to settle, leaving behind a world that is both foreign and familiar, just as it always has been. The air is crisp and sharp, biting at the skin as the Vikings step out into the frozen wilderness. The storm has passed, leaving behind a landscape untouched by human hands, an endless sea of white, the snow now thick and powdery, the ground hard beneath the boots. The sun is a pale orb, barely visible through the heavy clouds, casting a soft light over the snow-covered earth. It's cold, colder than you ever thought it could be, but the Vikings are unfazed. They know this land, and they know what must be done. The hunt, like everything else in the Viking world, is not for the faint of heart. It requires patience, skill, and the strength to withstand the elements. For days like these, when the temperature seems to freeze the very air around you, the Vikings rely not only on their tools, but on their experience. Years spent in the forests, learning the patterns of the animals, knowing when to move, when to wait, and when to strike. The men and women of the village gather their weapons, long spears, knives, and bows, each one sharpened and ready. But it's not just the weapon in hand that's important. It's the careful planning, the silent steps through the snow, the ability to read the signs of the land. The Vikings are masters of the silent approach. Every footstep is measured, every movement deliberate. Even in the dead of winter, they must move with precision, as the cold can make even the smallest mistake deadly. The forest is quiet, the usual sounds of birds and animals hushed by the thick blanket of snow. The only noise is the soft crunch of boots in the snow and the occasional rustle of trees bending under the weight of ice and snow. It's an eerie stillness, one that requires the hunter to be more alert than ever. Every twig snapped underfoot could be the difference between success and failure. There's an art to hunting in such cold conditions. The breath, visible in the air, freezes almost instantly, leaving trails of steam that drift away into the frosty landscape. The Viking hunters rely on their instincts as much as their knowledge. They know how to track by the faintest signs, a broken branch, the pattern of paw prints in the snow, the slight disturbance in the ground. The animals, too, must adapt to the cold, and the Vikings have learned to predict their movements, where they will go, when they will appear, and how best to catch them. The hunting party moves slowly, silently, until they reach a clearing, where the telltale signs of an elk or a deer are visible in the snow. The tracks are fresh, the path recently trodden, and the hunters pause, letting the silence wash over them once more. There is no rush. This is not a battle to be won by speed. It's about timing, patience, and above all, courage. The wind picks up again, but the hunters press on, their eyes sharp, their movements fluid despite the cold. They know this land better than most, and they know how to survive it. The hunt is their lifeline. Without it, the village would starve, the warmth of the fire would turn to ash, and the longhouse would be just another place to die in the cold. But with it, they can endure. With it, they can survive another day. As they approach their prey, the tension rises, the heartbeat quickening. The quiet of the world seems to hold its breath, and for a moment, all that exists is the hunter, the prey, and the land between them. Then, with a burst of energy, the hunter takes his shot. The sound of the bowstring cutting through the air is sharp against the stillness. The arrow flies true, and within moments the hunt is over. The Vikings, though weary from the cold and the long chase, are victorious. They have secured their food for the day, and while there may be no feast to celebrate yet, there is a quiet sense of satisfaction in knowing that they have endured. Again. The cold may be ever present, but so too is their strength, their skill, and their unwavering resolve. As they begin to carry the game back to the longhouse, the weight of the animal in their arms serves as a reminder. They are survivors, and in this harsh, frozen world, survival is the greatest victory of all. In the cold, relentless grip of winter, every day is a battle for survival. The winds howl outside the longhouse, and the snow, now packed hard underfoot, stretches endlessly across the land. The Vikings, though resilient and resourceful, know that the challenges they face are not simply a matter of enduring the cold. No, their survival depends on something more, on the careful management of the precious resources they have, and the unwavering resolve to make do with what they can find. Food is never plentiful in the deep of winter. The animals that roam the forests are harder to find, hidden away in the snow-drifted underbrush. The berries and herbs that once grew in abundance during the warmer months have long since been buried beneath the frost. The Vikings are dependent on what they've stored, on what they've hunted, and, most importantly, on how wisely they use every single part of what they've gathered. The hunt, which is often a grueling test of endurance and patience, yields more than just the meat of the animals they catch. Every part of the creature is valuable. Nothing is wasted. The Vikings, with their deep respect for the animals they hunt, use every piece. Each part of the animal has a purpose. The meat, of course, provides nourishment, but it is the other parts that ensure their survival. The bones are used for tools, weapons, and even to carve intricate designs on their shields. The fur and skin are preserved, dried, and stitched into clothing, thick, layered garments that will keep them warm through the harshest of winters. Even the hooves and sinew are carefully collected, transformed into rope or string. Nothing is discarded. Everything has its place in the cycle of survival. And then there is the firewood, a seemingly endless task in the midst of a bitter winter. Gathering wood for the fire is one of the most important and most exhausting jobs. The Vikings must travel deep into the woods, where the trees stand tall and silent, their branches heavy with snow. They cut and chop, stacking the wood high in preparation for the long nights ahead. Every piece is precious. The fire not only provides warmth, it is their lifeline. It cooks their food, dries their clothes, and provides light when the days are short and dark. The steady rhythm of chopping and hauling becomes a meditative act, one that repeats itself over and over, ensuring that the hearth remains lit. The longhouse itself is built for this very purpose. Its thick walls, made of stone and timber, are sturdy enough to withstand the fiercest storms, but they are also designed to retain the precious heat from the fire. But, even so, the constant battle to keep the fire burning is never ending. The Vikings, seasoned as they are, never allow the flames to go out. They tend to it constantly, adding logs, stoking embers, making sure the fire doesn't fade. For without it, the cold would creep in, slow and insidious, and soon it would be impossible to survive. It's a life of hard work, yes, but there's a quiet satisfaction in it as well. The Vikings are not just surviving, they are living in harmony with their world. They understand the delicate balance of nature, the ebb and flow of life. The land gives what it can, and in return the Vikings give everything they have to it. Each hunt, each task, is not just an act of survival. It's a testament to their ingenuity, their respect for the world around them, and their unwavering will to endure. As the fire crackles and the storm outside intensifies, the Vikings settle into their routine. The women mend clothes, weave wool, and prepare the remaining food for the days ahead. The men repair tools, sharpen weapons, and continue their work on the firewood. It's a constant, rhythmic movement, a dance between the elements and their will to survive. There's no space for waste in a world this harsh. Every small effort, every tiny bit of food or warmth contributes to the larger goal, survival. And as the longhouse settles into the quiet hum of the evening, there's a sense of peace in knowing that, for tonight, they've done what they can. The fire is burning brightly, the food is plentiful for now, and the world outside may rage, but inside, they are safe. The horizon is a cold, unbroken line, and the world stretches out in every direction, endless and white. The snow, though pristine and beautiful from a distance, is a silent killer to those who dare to travel too far. The wind bites through the fur and leather of the Vikings' clothing, cutting into their skin as they make their way across the frozen land. It's a world where the only constants are the cold, the snow, and the journey ahead. Today, like many others, the Vikings set out on a long journey, one that will take them far from the safety of their longhouse, deep into the wilderness, where the land is harsh and unforgiving. Their goal is simple: to find a safer place, to seek resources that might be running low in their home. It might take days, even weeks. The weather could change in an instant. The storm could return, fiercer than before. But still, they must go. They must endure. The snow crunches underfoot, each step a reminder of how difficult this journey will be. The cold is a constant presence, seeping into the bones, making every movement feel like an effort. The men and women travel in silence, each of them knowing what must be done. The air is thin and the wind sharp, but they press on, one step after another, determined to reach their destination, even though they cannot yet see it. There are no paths here, no signposts, no easy routes to follow. The Vikings know the land, but even they must rely on their instincts to find their way. They follow the patterns of the wind, the direction of the snowdrifts, the faint traces of animal tracks in the snow. Nature itself seems to test them at every turn, forcing them to be ever more resourceful, more aware of their surroundings. The journey is not without its dangers. As they travel further into the wilderness, They cross frozen rivers and climb over snow-drifted hills, their faces stinging with the cold. There are times when they must stop, huddle together for warmth and take brief moments of rest. The cold nips at their fingers and toes, numbing them slowly until it's almost impossible to feel anything at all. They know that frostbite is a very real threat, and every step becomes a careful decision, every movement calculated, every moment spent in the freezing air a gamble against their own bodies. But still, they carry on. The need for survival is stronger than the discomfort. They know that if they stop, even for a moment too long, they risk losing everything. Every mile covered brings them closer to the safety they seek, but the journey itself is never guaranteed. It's a test, not just of their strength, but of their willpower. The world around them is unchanging, just endless snow, ice, and the low grey sky that looms overhead. There's something eerie about it, as if the land itself has become frozen in time. But despite the bleakness, there is a certain beauty in the simplicity of it. The snowflakes drift slowly, catching the light, sparkling like tiny diamonds in the sky. The air is so clean, so still, that it feels as if the world has paused, holding its breath. As the days stretch on, the Vikings know the importance of conserving energy. They ration their food carefully, using what little they have with thought and precision. They hunt when they can, taking advantage of the rare moments when game is close enough to catch. They use every piece of the animals they catch, every scrap of food they find, and every resource they can gather along the way. The journey is a delicate balance of survival and endurance, moving forward, but always mindful of the need to preserve what little they have. Even when the cold seems unbearable, when the endless stretch of snow and ice begins to blur together, the Vikings do not falter. They are driven by a deep, primal need to keep moving, to survive. The journey is hard, and the road is long, but they are not afraid. The land may be cruel, but they are no strangers to hardship. They have faced storms, hunger, and darkness before, and they will face them again. And when finally, after days of travel, they reach the end of their journey and find a place of safety, it's not the warmth that greets them, it's the quiet satisfaction of having endured. The storm may return, the snow may fall again, but for now they are safe, and that, in this world, is enough. The calm of the longhouse is shattered by the sound of horns, low and steady, echoing through the village. The air is thick with anticipation, the tension almost palpable. The time has come, the time for the Viking warriors to set out on another raid. It's a ritual, one that has been repeated countless times, but each time it carries the same weight, the same electric charge of excitement and danger. Today, they are not just heading to battle, they are heading toward glory. The warriors prepare quietly, with a sense of purpose that is unmistakable. There is no grand celebration or fanfare. This is not a time for boasting or show. The Vikings understand that this moment, though fleeting, is the culmination of everything they are. Their lives have been shaped by the need to fight, to conquer, to carve their place in the world. The act of raiding is not just a means of survival. It is the pursuit of something greater, the pursuit of glory, honor, and the eternal memory of those who fought bravely. They gather their weapons, their long swords, axes, and shields, all tools that have seen bloodshed before. Each weapon is an extension of the warrior, a piece of their identity. The shields are simple but strong, decorated with bold designs that represent their village, their people. These are not just symbols of protection, they are symbols of pride. The long ships, their graceful forms cutting through the water, are ready. The sound of the oars moving rhythmically through the waves fills the air as the warriors board, their faces set with determination. The sea, ever so unpredictable, seems calm today, a rare gift, one that will make their journey easier. The sail catches the wind and the ship moves forward, cutting through the water like a predator in pursuit of its prey. As the long ship sails farther from home, the shores of the village become smaller, the familiar landscape disappearing behind them. The vastness of the sea stretches out before them, an endless expanse of blue, but the warriors are undaunted. They have crossed this water many times before, and they will do so again. The sea is not a barrier. It is a pathway, a means to the riches, the land, and the glory that await them. The journey across the open water is not an easy one. The waves are gentle for now, but there are always threats lurking beneath the surface, always the risk of storms or hostile ships. But the Viking warriors face it all with a calm resolve. They are used to this, accustomed to the unpredictable nature of both the sea and the world they live in. For them, every battle is a test, not just of their strength, but of their spirit. When they reach their destination, usually a village along the coast or a small settlement, they are greeted not with open arms, but with fear. They are the invaders, the unstoppable force, and they know that victory is not guaranteed. But they also know that they have something the enemy does not: unwavering courage, unyielding resolve. The Viking warriors fight with a ferocity that matches the strength of the sea itself, their movements swift and sure. The clash of metal, the roar of battle fills the air as they charge forward, each strike bringing them closer to victory. Despite the chaos of war, there is a rhythm to it, a steady pulse that keeps the warriors focused. The Viking raids are not mindless slaughter, they are strategic, deliberate, and measured. The goal is not just to win, but to leave a legacy, to make their mark on the world. With every victory, they carve their names into the annals of history. Each raid is a testament to their bravery, their skill, and their unrelenting desire to achieve greatness. As the battle comes to a close, the warriors stand victorious, their faces smeared with dirt and blood, their bodies tired but unbroken. The enemy has been defeated, and the spoils of the raid are theirs for the taking. But the real reward, the one that cannot be measured in gold or silver, is the glory they have earned. They have proven themselves once again, not just to their enemies, but to their people and to themselves. With their spoils in hand, the warriors return to their longships and sail back across the water, the horizon growing larger with every passing moment. The journey home is quieter than the journey out, a sense of satisfaction settling over them. The sea, though vast and unpredictable, has carried them to victory once again, and with that victory they know they have secured their place in the legend of the Vikings, a place that will endure long after they are gone. The weapon, in the Viking world, is more than just a tool of war. It is a symbol, a mark of honor, and a reflection of the warrior who wields it. Each weapon tells a story, from the way it's forged to the battles it has seen, and how it reflects the strength and status of its owner. The Viking's weapon is his identity, a piece of him that will carry his legacy long after the battles have ended. The most iconic of these weapons, perhaps, is the Viking sword. Forged with care, the blade is a thing of beauty as much as it is of function. Its steel, hardened by fire, gleams with a sharpness that can cut through the thickest armor. The handle, often wrapped in leather for grip, is worn smooth by the hand of its owner, each mark and imperfection a testament to the battles it has fought. The sword is not just a tool for fighting, it is a companion, a trusted partner that has stood by the Viking's side through thick and thin. In the heat of battle, when all else seems uncertain, the sword becomes an extension of the warrior, moving with precision and power, cutting through enemies and obstacles with deadly grace. But the sword is not the only weapon that the Vikings relied upon. The axe, perhaps even more so than the sword, was a symbol of their fierce nature. The Viking axe is brutal and simple, yet incredibly effective. With its heavy, broad blade, it can cleave through bone and wood with ease. The axe is a tool of versatility, not just for war but for survival. It fells trees, splits firewood, and carves the earth. But in the hands of a Viking warrior, it becomes something more. It is a weapon of power, a tool that can strike down an enemy with one powerful blow. The warrior's axe is often personalized, its handle engraved with runes or its blade adorned with intricate designs. These weapons, like the swords, carry meaning. They are not just instruments of war, but symbols of a Viking's strength, his legacy, and his place in the world. Then there is the spear, a weapon of reach and precision, Lighter than the sword or axe, the spear can be thrown or used in close combat. It is often seen as the weapon of the Viking warrior's first strike, used to take down enemies from a distance before moving in for the final blow. The spear is a versatile weapon, one that can be wielded with speed and agility, whether in battle or hunting. And, like all Viking weapons, it is crafted with great care, the shaft smooth and sturdy, the point sharp and deadly. The spear is often adorned with a simple yet elegant head, which could range from a broad, heavy blade to a long, slender spike. These weapons, though crafted for war, also serve as symbols of status and wealth. A finely crafted sword or axe was a mark of distinction, a reflection of a warrior's place within the tribe. The finest weapons were often passed down from father to son, from one generation to the next, carrying with them not just the legacy of their owner, but the history of their people. To hold a finely crafted sword or axe was to hold a piece of Viking heritage, one that spoke to the warrior's skill, his valor, and his connection to those who came before him. The weapons were not just tools, they were the lifeblood of the Viking warrior's identity. In the hands of a master, a sword could become an instrument of poetry, each strike a graceful, calculated movement. An axe, in the right hands, could be as swift as a storm, cleaving through the air with unmatched force. These weapons are not just forged in fire, they are forged in the spirit of the Viking, in his strength, his courage, and his unyielding desire to leave a mark on the world. And so, each weapon, whether it be sword, axe, or spear, carries with it the legacy of those who wield it. It is a symbol of power, of strength, and of honor. In the Viking world, a warrior's weapon is not just a tool for survival, it is a statement, a testament to his place in the world and the mark he will leave upon it. In the heat of battle, amidst the clash of steel and the roar of war, there is an unspoken bond between the Viking warriors. It is a bond forged not just in blood, but in trust, respect, and the quiet understanding that, in this moment, they are more than just individuals. They are a brotherhood, united not just by the desire to win, but by the shared belief that survival depends on one another. As the battle rages, the Viking warriors move together, their actions synchronized in a fluid dance of strength and precision. The swords clash, the shields rise to block blows, and the air is thick with the sounds of war. But through it all, there is an undeniable rhythm, a rhythm that comes from years of fighting side by side, from countless raids and skirmishes where they have learned not only to fight, but to fight together. In the midst of the chaos, a warrior's eyes lock with those of his comrade, and without a word, they know what needs to be done. One raises his shield to block an incoming blow, while the other strikes down the enemy with a swift, decisive move. There is no hesitation, no second-guessing, only the understanding that their lives depend on this unity, on this shared strength. In this world, where death is always a step away, there is no room for fear when you know you are not alone. The bond between the warriors is not just forged on the battlefield, but in the quiet moments before the fighting begins. As they prepare, they share glances, words of encouragement, or even a silent nod, knowing that today, as every day before, they fight not just for glory, but for each other. The sword may be their tool, but it is the brotherhood that is their strength. In the heat of battle, the world around them becomes a blur. The only thing that matters is the warrior at your side, the one who will have your back when the fight gets too fierce, the one who will pull you out of the fray when you are too tired to stand. There's a sacred trust between these men and women, a trust that cannot be broken by fear, by pain, or by the chaos of war. The Viking warriors are more than just fighters. They are a family, bound together by more than just blood, by more than just shared struggle. They are bound by the understanding that their fates are entwined, that the survival of one means the survival of all. In the chaos of battle, this unspoken bond becomes their greatest weapon. When a Viking falls, another is there to take his place. When one is injured, others will carry him from the field. And when victory is won, it is not just the individual's achievement, it is the victory of the entire brotherhood. The camaraderie doesn't end with the battle. After the fighting subsides, the warriors gather around the fire, their bodies battered and bruised, their faces weary but satisfied. The shared experience of the fight, the bond that was solidified in the heat of battle, continues. They share a drink, a meal, and stories of the fight, their laughter echoing into the night. It's in these quiet moments that the true strength of their brotherhood becomes clear, not in the violence of battle, but in the shared understanding of what it means to fight for each other. In the end, it is this brotherhood that defines the Viking warrior. It is not the sword, the shield, or the axe that makes them great. It is the bond they share, the loyalty they have for one another, and the unwavering commitment to stand together, no matter the odds. For in the end, the true glory of a Viking warrior is not just in the battles he wins, but in the brothers and sisters who stand by his side. The sound of the waves lapping against the sides of the longship is a constant companion, a gentle rhythm that matches the movement of the ship as it cuts through the water. The longship itself is a thing of beauty and power, long, sleek, and built for speed. Its wooden frame, strong and resilient, creaks with each swell of the sea, but it is steady and unyielding in its course. The Viking longship is not just a vessel, it is the very embodiment of the Viking spirit, a ship that allows its people to travel vast distances, across oceans and rivers, with ease and confidence. The ship's design is both functional and magnificent. The prow rises high, adorned with intricate carvings that depict warriors, gods, and the creatures of legend. The dragon heads that often adorn the front of these ships are not just decorative, they are symbols of strength, protection, and fearlessness. The longship is a creature of the sea, meant to inspire awe in those who see it and strike fear in the hearts of enemies. But it is more than just a weapon. It is a lifeline, a bridge between distant lands and the Viking world. As the long ship cuts through the icy waters, the cold wind whips through the hair of the men and women aboard. It is a biting, relentless cold, but the warriors are unfazed. Their furs are thick, and their resolve is thicker. There is no room for discomfort on the ship, not when the journey ahead is so important. They are accustomed to the elements, accustomed to the freezing spray of the sea and the cold that seeps into their bones. The sails are pulled taut, the oars moving in sync with the rhythm of the sea, pushing the ship forward with a quiet determination. Each stroke of the oars is a step closer to their goal, whether it's a distant shore to raid, a new land to explore, or simply the journey home. The atmosphere aboard the ship is one of quiet focus. The warriors are accustomed to the sea, but the journey is never without its dangers. The sea is unpredictable, and even the most experienced sailors know that anything can happen. There are moments when the ship feels as though it might be swallowed by the waves, when the wind howls so fiercely that it seems the very sky itself is about to collapse. Yet, despite these challenges, the Vikings press on, their faces set with determination, their eyes fixed on the horizon. They know that the sea is both a friend and a foe, and it is through this balance that they have learned to thrive. The longship is a marvel of Viking engineering, a testament to the craftsmanship and ingenuity of its creators. Its shallow draft allows it to sail in shallow rivers and along the coasts, while its long, narrow hull cuts through open waters with speed. The ship's design is as functional as it is elegant, with space for both warriors and supplies, and the ability to carry treasures and plunder from distant lands back home. The decks are simple but sturdy, with just enough room for the crew to work, eat, and rest between voyages. The longship is a vessel of purpose. Nothing unnecessary, nothing wasted. And yet, despite its purpose, there is a certain magic to being aboard a Viking longship. The creaking of the wood, the sound of the wind filling the sail, the motion of the waves, it's a rhythm that calms the soul and connects the warrior to something larger than himself. On the sea, the world seems to slow down, and for a moment it feels as though time itself is suspended. The warriors aboard the ship are not just voyaging across the ocean, they are voyaging through history, following in the wake of those who came before them, carving their own path toward the future. As the long ship sails into the distance, the coastline receding behind them, there is a sense of freedom, of boundless possibilities. The Viking world, once confined to the cold, rugged shores of Scandinavia, now seems vast, open, and full of opportunity. The longship is their gateway to the world, a tool that allows them to explore, conquer, and connect with distant lands. It is a symbol of their strength and resilience, a vessel that carries the spirit of the Viking people wherever the wind may take them. The ship moves steadily through the water, its long, graceful form cutting through the waves as the warriors continue their journey. The cold wind is relentless, but so is the resolve of the Viking crew. The sea may be treacherous, but it is nothing compared to the fire that burns within them. They are explorers, conquerors, and adventurers. And as the longship glides through the icy waters, they know that wherever they go, they will carry the legacy of their people with them across the seas to the farthest reaches of the world. As the sun dips low on the horizon, casting long shadows over the snow-covered land, the scent of food begins to fill the longhouse. It is a comforting scent, one that speaks of warmth and survival in a world where every meal is earned. The Vikings, with their robust appetites and simple tastes, have learned to make the most of what the land gives them. In this cold, unforgiving world, food is not just a necessity, it is a celebration of life itself. The Viking diet, though simple, is hearty and nourishing. At the heart of their meals is the meat that comes from the animals they hunt: deer, wild boar, and even the occasional bear. These meats are often roasted over the fire, the skin crisping while the flesh inside remains tender, infused with the smoke and heat of the flame. The crackling sound of fat dripping into the fire is a reminder of the sustenance it provides. The aroma is rich and mouth-watering, filling the longhouse with the promise of a satisfying meal. Fish, too, plays a key role in the Viking diet. The rivers and seas are teeming with life, and the Vikings, with their keen skills, know how to fish and preserve the catch. The fish they catch is often dried or smoked, ensuring that there is food to last through the long winter months when the waters are frozen and fishing is no longer possible. The dried fish is not the most flavorful when eaten alone, but when prepared in a stew or mixed with vegetables, it becomes a hearty and nutritious dish. Vegetables, though less abundant, are still a part of the Viking diet. Root vegetables like carrots, turnips, and onions grow deep in the soil, their tough skins shielding them from the cold. These vegetables are often boiled or roasted, their earthy flavors grounding the meal, balancing the richness of the meat and fish. The Vikings, resourceful as always, also harvest herbs and berries when they are in season, adding a burst of freshness to their meals. The contrast of sweet berries and savory meats is a simple pleasure, one that provides a brief respite from the harshness of the world outside. And then there is the bread, the dark, hearty rye bread that the Vikings bake to accompany every meal. It is dense and filling, often served with a dollop of butter or a hunk of cheese. The bread, though simple, is a staple in every Viking household, providing the necessary carbohydrates to fuel them through the long days of work and battle. It's the kind of bread that requires a strong chew, but it is satisfying in a way that only simple, wholesome food can be. But it is not just the food that defines a Viking meal. It is the drink, too. The Vikings have a deep connection to their beverages, and their choice of drink speaks to both their resourcefulness and their love of celebration. The most famous of their drinks, of course, is beer. Brewed from barley or oats, Viking beer is thick and robust, with a hearty flavour that can warm even the coldest of souls. It is not the light, refreshing beer of modern times, but something heavier, more substantial. The beer is often brewed in large batches enough to last through the winter months, and it is served generously at feasts and gatherings. Mead, a drink made from honey, water, and fermented yeast, also holds a special place in Viking culture. It is sweet, fragrant, and intoxicating, and it is often consumed during celebrations and feasts. The Vikings believed that mead was a gift from the gods, a drink that could bring inspiration, strength, and even wisdom. It's a drink of the gods, and when shared with friends and warriors, it becomes a symbol of camaraderie and brotherhood. As the meal comes to an end, the sounds of satisfied murmurs fill the air, and the warriors lean back in their seats, their bellies full and their spirits lifted. The fire continues to crackle in the corner, the light flickering across the faces of those gathered. It is in these quiet moments that the true bond of the Viking people is felt, not in the battles they fight or the lands they conquer, but in the shared experience of a good meal, a hearty drink, and the warmth of the fire. The food they eat, though simple, is a reflection of the Viking way of life, resourceful, resilient, and full of heart. The hearty meals are a reminder that, even in the harshest of conditions, life goes on. It is a celebration of survival, of the strength it takes to endure the cold, the hunger, and the fight. And for the Vikings, that is a feast worth remembering. In the quiet corners of the longhouse, away from the crackling fire, there exists a space where healing takes place, a humble nook filled with the scents of dried herbs, roots, and natural remedies. Here, the healer works, her hands steady, her knowledge deep, passed down through generations. For the Viking, the healer is not just a caregiver. She is a guardian of life itself, wielding the wisdom of nature's gifts to ease pain, mend wounds, and restore health. The Vikings, though fierce in battle, understand that the world they inhabit is fragile. Their lives are constantly at risk, whether from the violence of war, the biting cold, or the unpredictable illnesses that occasionally sweep through their villages. In such a world, where medical knowledge is passed through oral tradition, the healer's touch is often the difference between life and death. The healer's tools are simple but effective. The walls around her are lined with bundles of herbs. Sage, thyme, and lavender hang dried in the rafters, their earthy aromas filling the air. The shelves hold jars of tinctures, oils, and powders, remedies made from roots, flowers, and barks. Each jar, each bundle, is labelled in a language known only to the healer, marking the purpose of the plant it contains. The Vikings do not rely on fancy potions or magic. Instead, they trust in the healing properties of nature, carefully harvested and mixed with skill. When a Viking warrior returns from a raid with a deep wound or a sprain from the unforgiving journey, the healer is there. She examines the injury with calm precision, her hands skilled in the art of treatment. A cut, deep and bleeding, is cleaned with water and treated with a poultice of crushed yarrow, a plant known to stop bleeding and soothe pain. For bruises, a mixture of comfrey and plantain is applied, its natural properties working to reduce swelling and promote healing. Even the most dangerous injuries are not beyond the reach of the healer's touch. In the event of broken bones, the healer would carefully set the bone, using strips of cloth or leather to bind it tightly, ensuring the bones heal properly. But it's not just the physical ailments that the healer tends to, it's the spirit too. In the Viking world, the mind and body are closely linked, and emotional wounds are just as real as physical ones. A word of encouragement, a gentle hand on the shoulder, can sometimes make all the difference. The healer is also a listener, someone who understands the toll that a life of constant struggle and danger can take on the soul. The healer's knowledge is not just in the plants she uses, it is in the way she listens to the body. She knows when to apply heat, when to cool, and when to let the body heal on its own. Sometimes there are no quick fixes, and the best remedy is simply rest, something the Vikings rarely have the luxury of, but something they know is often necessary. Her wisdom lies in knowing when to push and when to let nature take its course. And of course there are the traditional remedies, those that are passed down through stories, mixed with the ancient rituals of the Vikings. Some say that the gods themselves guide the healer's hand, providing her with visions and signs to aid her work. These beliefs, though shrouded in mystery, give the Vikings a sense of connection to something greater than themselves, a belief that even in the darkest moments there is guidance to be found. A healer might call upon Odin or Freya, asking for their blessing on a particularly difficult treatment or a dangerous illness. In times of sickness, the healer is not just a provider of medicine, she is a source of hope. When the cold winter months bring sickness, it is she who knows the remedies to treat fevers, coughs, and chills. Often these remedies are simple but effective, broths made from bones and roots to nourish the body, and herbal teas to soothe the throat or calm the mind. The healer's touch is a quiet reassurance that even in a world so harsh, there are still ways to protect and care for each other. The healer is a quiet force, never seeking recognition, but always present in the background of Viking life. Her work may be unnoticed in the heat of battle or the excitement of a feast, but when it is needed, her expertise becomes invaluable. She is as much a part of Viking life as the sword and shield, her wisdom intertwined with the survival of her people. And when the days are long and the world feels cold, it is the healer who reminds them that life, though fragile, is always worth fighting for. In the quiet corner of the longhouse, where the flickering shadows of the fire dance across the walls, the hum of steady work fills the air. Here, amidst the tools of trade and the raw materials gathered from the land, the Viking craftsman is at work. The task at hand, the crafting of a shield. It is no small endeavour, for this shield will not only protect its bearer in battle, it will be a symbol of strength, a testament to the skill of its maker, and a reflection of the warrior who wields it. The first step begins with the wood, a sturdy, reliable oak chosen for its resilience and strength. The wood is carefully measured and shaped into a round, smooth form. The craftsman's hands are steady as he uses his axe to cut and carve the edges, making sure they are both functional and precise. There is a rhythm to the work, the steady chop of the axe as it bites into the wood, each strike shaping the shield's form, each movement deliberate and controlled. As the shape begins to take form, the craftsman sands the surface of the shield, smoothing it until it is as flawless as the wood will allow. The shield must be perfect, not just in its structure, but in its feel, its balance, and its durability. A warrior will hold this shield with his life, and it must be comfortable in his grip, capable of withstanding the force of a blow, and strong enough to protect him from the harshest of strikes. Once the basic shape is complete, the craftsman moves to the next step, reinforcing the shield with metal. A strong iron boss is attached to the centre, a sturdy round piece that will absorb the brunt of any blows. The iron is forged in the fire, the heat turning it a brilliant orange as it is hammered and shaped into form. The craftsman, familiar with the delicate balance of heat and metal, watches the iron closely, his eyes sharp as he works. The hammer strikes with precision, shaping the iron into the perfect fit for the shield's centre. Around the boss, leather strips are added, forming a grip for the warrior's hand. These strips are woven tightly, ensuring a strong hold that won't slip during battle. The leather, once soft and supple, hardens as it is worked, providing a secure, sturdy grasp for the warrior. The craftsman's hands are now stained with the marks of his work, wood, metal, and leather, all intertwined as he assembles the pieces with care. But it is not just about function. The shield is also a work of art. The Viking warriors take great pride in the appearance of their shields, and this one is no exception. Once the basic structure is completed, the craftsman begins to adorn the surface with designs. Paints, made from natural pigments, are mixed carefully to create deep reds, bright yellows, and rich blues. The designs are simple but bold, often featuring symbols of the gods, animals, or intricate patterns that tell stories of the past. The craftsman's brushstrokes are steady as he adds the final touches, swirls of colour that seem to come alive on the surface of the shield. The design may feature the face of a wolf, the image of Odin's ravens, or perhaps a stylized knotwork pattern, each stroke carrying with it the weight of Viking tradition. These symbols are not just decoration. They are protective charms meant to invoke the favour of the gods and to instill fear in the hearts of enemies. As the paint dries and the shield takes its final form, there is a sense of satisfaction in the air. The work is done, and what was once a pile of raw materials has now become a finished piece, a shield that is ready to be wielded in battle, a symbol of the warrior's strength, his courage, and his place within the Viking world. The shield, though a simple tool of war, is also a deeply personal possession. It is a reflection of the warrior's identity and a physical representation of his journey. The craftsman steps back, admiring his work. It is more than just a shield. It is a piece of his heritage, a link to the generations of Vikings who have gone before him, each of them adding their mark to the legacy of their people. The shield may soon bear the scars of battle, but for now it stands as a testament to the skill, patience, and dedication of its maker. As the fire crackles in the background, the longhouse grows quiet once more. The shield is placed carefully against the wall, ready to be taken up when the call to battle comes. It is not just a tool of war, but a part of the warrior's story, crafted with care, imbued with meaning, and destined for greatness. The air in the blacksmith's forge is thick with the heat of the fire, the rhythmic sound of the hammer striking metal a steady beat that fills the room. The forge is alive with energy. The fire crackles, the anvil rings with each strike, and the heat seems to pulse, making the very air shimmer with intensity. Here, in this space, iron is transformed, shaped into tools and weapons that will carry the Viking spirit into battle, or simply make life in the village a little easier. The blacksmith, a sturdy man with calloused hands, stands at the anvil, his face glowing red from the heat of the furnace. His movements are precise, his body in tune with the rhythm of the forge. With each strike of the hammer, the metal shifts, changing shape under the weight of his blows. The sound of the hammer meeting the hot iron is loud and sharp, like thunder that echoes through the heart of the forge. Each blow is deliberate, each movement carefully calculated to shape the metal into the desired form. The furnace roars behind him, its flames licking at the metal, coaxing it to life, making it malleable, ready to be molded. The blacksmith reaches into the fire with tongs, pulling a glowing piece of iron from the flames. The metal is white-hot, almost blinding in its intensity, but the blacksmith is unbothered by the heat. He has done this 1,000 times, and the warmth is part of the dance. He sets the metal onto the anvil and begins to strike, the rhythm of his hammering steady and sure. With each strike, the iron takes form. It could become a sword, a shield, or a simple tool, each one crafted with the same care and attention to detail. The blacksmith's focus is unwavering, his eyes sharp as he watches the metal bend and shift beneath his hands. There is a quiet satisfaction in the process, a knowledge that this work, though simple, is essential. Without the blacksmith, there would be no swords to wield, no axes to chop wood, no nails to build homes. The forge is the heart of the Viking world, where raw material is transformed into the very tools that sustain their way of life. As the hammer falls, sparks fly into the air, dancing like tiny stars in the dim glow of the forge. The heat is intense, and the air is filled with the scent of burning wood and hot metal. There is a certain beauty in the process, in the way the metal bends under pressure, the way it gleams as it is shaped into something new. The blacksmith works tirelessly, shaping the iron with care, each piece becoming an extension of his own skill and determination. The forge is not just a place of work, it is a place of transformation. The heat of the fire and the force of the hammer do more than shape the metal. They shape the blacksmith himself. Each weapon, each tool is a product of his experience, his craft and his patience. It is not enough to simply know how to strike the iron. The blacksmith must understand the metal, must feel its rhythm, must know when to strike hard and when to let the heat do the work. The sound of the hammering slows as the blacksmith finishes shaping the metal. He dips the glowing iron into a tub of water, the hiss of steam rising in the air as the metal cools. The heat of the forge begins to subside, but the work is far from over. The blacksmith examines the weapon, runs his fingers over the surface, feeling for imperfections. If the metal is not perfect, if the balance is wrong, he will not hesitate to return it to the fire, to reshape it once more. As the cooling process continues, the blacksmith sharpens the blade, testing its edge with a practiced hand. The sound of the file against the metal is quiet, soothing almost, as he smooths out the rough edges, making the blade sharp enough to cut through bone and flesh. The weapon takes its final form, gleaming in the dim light of the forge, a symbol of strength and skill, ready to be wielded in battle or in daily life. The forge, now quiet except for the occasional crackle of the remaining embers, is a place of creation, a place where metal is shaped into something that can change the course of history. The blacksmith steps back and surveys his work, a sense of pride in his chest. This blade, this tool, it is more than just a thing of metal. It is a product of his hands, his skill, and his dedication. And in the world of the Vikings, It is a tool that will carry with it the mark of his craftsmanship, a legacy that will endure in the hands of those who use it. In the warmth of the longhouse, where the fire crackles softly and the scent of cooked food lingers in the air, the rhythm of the Viking family plays out in quiet harmony. Life here is not about grand gestures or loud proclamations. It is about the steady, tireless work that each member of the family contributes, day in and day out. The Viking family, like the land they inhabit, is built on resilience, strength, and a deep sense of unity. Each day begins with a shared sense of purpose, a quiet understanding that survival depends on the efforts of every individual. The father, strong and steadfast, rises early. His hands are calloused from years of hard labour, but his eyes are kind, always taking the time to check on his children before stepping outside to tend to the animals or gather wood for the fire. His work is steady, just as the rhythm of his family's life is. He is the protector, the provider, but also the teacher, passing down the knowledge of the land and the skills of survival to the next generation. The mother, equally strong, is the heart of the household. Her day begins before the sun rises, her hands moving swiftly to prepare the meal, mend the clothing, and ensure that everything is in order. She is the glue that holds the family together, and her work, though often unseen, is the foundation upon which the rest of the day is built. In her eyes there is a quiet strength and knowledge that every action she takes contributes to the well-being of those around her. From preparing the hearth to caring for the children, her hands are never still. She is the nurturer, the one who keeps the family fed, clothed, and safe from the cold. The children, though young, are never left idle. From the moment they are able, they are taught the ways of their people. The boys learn to fish, to hunt, and to tend the animals, their small hands mimicking the movements of their father as they practice with wooden swords or help gather firewood. The girls, under the watchful eye of their mother, learn to cook, to weave, and to care for the household, their nimble fingers helping to spin wool or patch the worn clothes of their family. They are raised with the understanding that survival requires everyone's effort, that each task, no matter how small, plays a vital role in keeping the family strong. At the end of the day, when the work is done and the fire has burned low, the family gathers together. There are no grand meals, no elaborate feasts, only simple food prepared with care, shared between the people who make this life possible. The bread, hearty and thick, is torn with hands that have worked all day, and the meat, roasted and tender, is passed around as everyone takes their fill. The atmosphere is peaceful, comfortable, and warm. There is no rush, no urgency, only the quiet satisfaction of having worked together, having completed another day of survival side by side. The family is united not only by their love for one another, but by the shared understanding that life in the Viking world is demanding, and the strength of the family lies in its unity. Each person plays their part, and together they create something stronger than the sum of its parts. The father may hunt, the mother may cook, the children may play and learn, but in the end, it is the bond between them that makes them whole. As the fire crackles softly in the background, the family sits together, telling stories of the past, of battles won and journeys taken. The older ones speak of their own childhoods, of how they too worked with their parents to survive the harsh winters and the long days of hard labour. The children listen, wide-eyed, dreaming of the day they will take their place in the cycle of work, of survival, and of love. There is no distinction here between work and play, between the duties of adulthood and the innocence of childhood. Everything is intertwined. A Viking family is a living, breathing entity, a collection of hearts and hands that beat in unison, each person contributing to the whole. They understand that they are stronger together, that no task is too great when shared, and that the love that binds them is just as important as the fire that warms them, the food that nourishes them, and the work that sustains them. And so, as the day comes to an end and the longhouse settles into quiet, the family is content. They have survived another day, and tomorrow they will do it all over again, together, as one. The world outside may be cold, harsh, and unpredictable, but inside the longhouse there is warmth, there is love, there is work, and there is a family that will endure no matter what comes their way. In the quiet of the longhouse, with the fire crackling softly and the cold wind howling outside, the Vikings gather, their thoughts often turning toward the gods who watch over them. The gods of the north are not distant, untouchable beings. They are a part of everyday life, present in the winds, the trees, the sky, and the sea. To the Vikings, the gods are as real and vital as the world around them, shaping their lives, their battles, and even the seasons. At the heart of their beliefs is Odin, the All-Father, the wise and all-knowing god who presides over Asgard, the realm of the gods. Odin is a god of wisdom, knowledge, and war. It is said that he sacrificed one of his eyes in exchange for the wisdom of the world, a sacrifice that only further cemented his role as the god of both life and death. To the Vikings, Odin represents the harsh realities of existence. He understands the sacrifices one must make in pursuit of greatness, whether it is the cost of battle or the toll of survival in a harsh world. When the winds howl through the trees, the Vikings whisper Odin's name, believing that he rides the winds, watching over them from above, guiding their actions in battle. They honor him with sacrifices and prayers, asking for his favor before heading into war. In the quiet moments of reflection, when the fire burns low and the night stretches on, they remember Odin's wisdom, understanding that he is not a god to be feared, but a god to be respected, a god who understands that victory is not easily won, and that wisdom often comes at a price. Beside Odin stands Thor, the thunderous god of strength and protection. Thor, with his mighty hammer Mjolnir, is the god who guards the Vikings from the forces of chaos and destruction. When the storms roll in and the thunder cracks across the sky, the Vikings know that Thor is at work, defending them from harm and ensuring the safety of their lands. Thor is a god of action, a protector who fights for what is right, but also a god who understands the value of resilience and courage. To the Vikings, Thor represents the raw power of nature. His thunderous voice echoes in the rumble of the storms, and his lightning strikes the earth with the force of 1,000 warriors. He is the god that the Vikings call upon for strength and protection, especially before heading into battle. His hammer, a symbol of power and protection, is worn proudly by the warriors, a reminder that Thor is always with them, guiding their strikes and protecting their hearts. To wear a symbol of Thor is to wear courage itself. And then there is Freya, the goddess of love, fertility, and battle. Though she is often associated with beauty and desire, Freya is also a fierce warrior who leads the Valkyries, the choosers of the slain. The Valkyries, under Freya's command, gather the bravest of warriors, taking them to the halls of Valhalla, where they will feast and fight until the end of days. To the Vikings, Freya represents the duality of life, love and death, peace and war. She is both nurturing and fierce, a goddess who embodies the balance between strength and tenderness. Freya is invoked during moments of personal struggle, whether in battle or in love. Her warriors, the Valkyries, are seen as a symbol of courage and honor, and the Vikings often pray to Freya before heading into battle, asking for her blessing. Her presence in their lives is a reminder that while love and beauty are precious, so too is the power to protect and defend those who are dear. Freya is the goddess who reminds the Vikings that victory in battle is not just about physical strength, but about the heart, the willingness to fight for those you love. The Viking worldview is deeply intertwined with these gods, their stories woven into the very fabric of Viking life. The gods are not abstract concepts. They are tangible, powerful beings who interact with the world. The Vikings believe that the gods live within the natural elements, in the winds that blow, the rivers that run, the trees that grow, and the creatures that roam the earth. Every aspect of nature is a reflection of the divine, and the Vikings see themselves as part of this vast, interconnected web of life, with the gods watching over them as they navigate the challenges of existence. The stars above, too, are part of this cosmic tapestry. The Vikings use the stars to guide their journeys across the sea, and the constellations themselves are seen as representations of the gods. The night sky becomes a map, a map that leads them not only across the physical world, but through the spiritual realm as well, where the gods reside, guiding and protecting their fate. To the Vikings, the gods are both protectors and judges. They provide guidance, strength and wisdom, but they also expect respect, honour and loyalty in return. The Vikings' devotion to the gods is not one of blind faith, but of mutual respect. The gods, in their eyes, are both allies and adversaries, beings who shape the world but also allow the Vikings to shape their own destiny. The balance between these forces is what defines the Viking way of life, where fate and free will dance together, each one influencing the other. As the fire crackles softly in the longhouse, the Vikings settle into the warmth, their thoughts lingering on the gods who guide them. With every prayer, every sacrifice, and every battle fought, they honour the gods of the north, knowing that they are not alone in the world, that the gods are watching, guiding, and protecting them on their journey. As the cold wind howls outside, the longhouse feels like a warm refuge, a sanctuary from the harsh world beyond. The heart of this refuge, the soul of Viking life, is the Great Hall. It is here, beneath the thick wooden beams and stone walls, where the Viking family gathers after a long day of work, where warriors rest after a grueling raid, and where the stories of the past and the hopes of the future are shared. The Great Hall is a space that echoes with history, a place filled with the scent of roasting meat, the sound of crackling fire, and the warmth of shared life. The longhouse is built for community, no room for privacy, no separate chambers, just a central space where everyone comes together. Its long, low ceilings are supported by sturdy beams, carved with intricate symbols of gods and legends, a constant reminder of the Vikings' reverence for the divine and the stories that shape their lives. At the centre of it all is the fire, an enormous hearth that dominates the space, its flickering flames casting a warm, golden glow over the room. The heat from the fire is a comfort against the bitter cold that settles in the land outside. The fire burns steadily, a source of warmth and light, where the men and women of the Viking family gather around to eat, speak, and reflect. The flames dance with an almost hypnotic rhythm, crackling and popping, their heat reaching deep into the bones, warming both body and spirit. Around the hearth, the long tables stretch across the room, made of rough-hewn wood, worn smooth by years of use. These tables are not just for eating, they are the places where plans are made, where bonds are forged, and where the news of the day is shared. The warriors sit together, their faces tired but filled with anticipation for the future. Their swords and shields, weathered from battle, lean against the walls or hang from the ceiling, reminders of the battles they've fought and those yet to come. On these tables, the food is simple but nourishing. Bread, thick and hearty, is torn with hands rough from years of labour. Meat, whether roasted venison, salted fish or hearty stews, is passed from hand to hand, always plentiful, always enough to sustain the people. The food is shared freely with no thought of excess, for in the Viking world, survival is not guaranteed. Every meal, every bite, is a gift, a moment of sustenance in a world that can be unforgiving. As the warriors sit, their faces illuminated by the flickering firelight, they speak of the days ahead, of upcoming raids, of distant lands, of battles yet to be fought. Their voices rise and fall in the warm air, their words filled with the confidence that comes from years of survival. There is no fear here, only the quiet anticipation of what's to come. The women too play their part in the conversation, offering their own thoughts and wisdom, for the Viking family is a collective, where every voice matters. They speak of the harvest, of the coming winter, and of the well-being of the village. The discussions are not just about war, but about the livelihood of the people, ensuring that everyone has what they need to survive. The Great Hall is not just a place for food and rest, it is a place for reflection and decision-making. It is here that the warriors gather to make plans, to discuss strategies, and to speak of their adventures. The stories of past raids are told with pride, their voices tinged with the excitement of the battles they've fought. They speak of the lands they've conquered, of the treasures they've claimed, but also of the struggles they've endured, the comrades they've lost. Each story, passed down from generation to generation, weaves together the fabric of Viking culture, a culture defined by bravery, resilience, and unity. The Great Hall is also a place of worship. In moments of quiet, when the fire burns low and the laughter fades, the Vikings gather to honor their gods. The sound of chanting fills the air, the warriors bowing their heads in reverence to Odin, Thor, and Freya. The gods are always present, watching over them as they sit together, sharing in the warmth and the safety of their home. At the end of the evening, when the fire has burned down to embers and the conversation has quieted, the Vikings settle into their places to rest. The Great Hall, still echoing with the sounds of the day, becomes a place of peace. The long tables are cleared, the fire smouldering softly, casting long shadows on the walls. The warriors, now weary from the day's work, lie down on their beds, the warmth of the fire still lingering in their bones. The sound of the wind outside is a distant hum, but inside there is calm, there is peace. The Great Hall may be filled with the noise of the day, but it is also a place of quiet reflection, a place where the past and future collide, where stories are told and plans are made. It is the heart of Viking life, where the bonds of family and community are strengthened, and where, despite the dangers of the world outside, the warmth of the fire and the strength of the people bring comfort and strength to all who gather within. In the flickering light of the longhouse, where the fire crackles softly and the scent of smoke fills the air, the stories of the gods and monsters come alive. The Vikings are not just warriors, they are keepers of an ancient tradition, one filled with tales of powerful gods, daring heroes, and battles that transcend the boundaries of the physical world. These myths and legends are more than just stories. They are the threads that weave the very fabric of Viking identity, linking each generation to the gods, the ancestors, and the eternal cycle of life and death. The tales of Odin, the All-Father, are perhaps the most revered. Odin, the wise and all-knowing god who sacrificed his eye for the wisdom of the world, is a figure that looms large in Viking culture. His story is one of self-sacrifice, of a pursuit of knowledge that comes at great cost. He is the god who wanders the world in search of wisdom, who roams the lands in disguise, always learning, always watching. His journey to the well of knowledge, where he hung from the great tree Yggdrasil, is one of the most powerful myths. For 9 days and nights, Odin sacrificed himself, hanging from the world tree, pierced by his own spear, in exchange for the knowledge of the runes, the very essence of the world's secrets. To the Vikings, this tale was not just about Odin's sacrifice. It was about the pursuit of knowledge and the understanding that true wisdom requires great cost. The myth speaks to the harshness of Viking life, where survival and victory are not given freely, but must be earned through effort, sacrifice, and courage. Alongside Odin stands Thor, the god of thunder, whose hammer, Mjolnir, is both a symbol of power and protection. Thor's myths are filled with daring adventures, battles against giants, monsters, and creatures of chaos. One of the most well-known stories tells of Thor's journey to the land of the giants, where he must use his strength and cunning to outwit the monstrous beings who dwell there. In one legend, Thor engages in a contest of strength with the giant Hrungnir, who challenges him to a duel. With his hammer in hand, Thor strikes down the giant with a single blow, proving not only his might, but his unyielding will to protect the gods and their realm. Thor's tales are not only about physical power, they are about resilience. In a world full of dangers, Thor represents the will to fight, to stand firm against the odds. He is the protector, the defender, and the Vikings revered him not just for his strength, but for his role as the guardian of the world. And then there is Freya, the goddess of love and fertility, whose myth is as complex as the Viking understanding of life and death. Freya, who rules over the Valkyries, the maidens who choose the bravest of warriors to enter Valhalla, is a figure of both beauty and power. She is not just the goddess of love, but also of war, for she understands the duality of life. that love and death are intertwined. Her own journey to obtain Brisingamen, the necklace of the gods, is a tale of determination, beauty, and cunning. In her quest, she faces trials, bargains, and even risks her honor to achieve what she desires, embodying the balance of strength and grace. The Vikings believed that Freya's blessings were essential in battle, for she chose the warriors who would live in Valhalla, where they would feast and fight until the end of the world, Ragnarok. Her connection to both life and death mirrored the Viking experience, where every battle was not only a fight for survival, but a chance for eternal glory. But the Vikings did not just worship the gods, they lived among them in their stories. Their world was one where the boundaries between the earthly and the divine were blurred, where gods and monsters walked among mortals. One of the most terrifying legends was that of the Jörmungandr, the great serpent that encircles the world, who will one day rise from the depths of the ocean to fight Thor at Ragnarok. The serpent, whose body is so vast that it can wrap around the earth, represents the chaotic forces that threaten to unravel the order of the world. Its battle with Thor is one of the great cataclysmic events of Viking mythology, a symbol of the never-ending struggle between order and chaos. Then there are the giants, the enemies of the gods, who represent the forces of destruction and chaos. The giant Loki, once a friend to the gods, turns against them, bringing about the end of the world during Ragnarok. Loki's trickery and betrayal are central to Viking mythology, and his role as both a creator and destroyer mirrors the dual nature of the world itself, where creation and destruction are two sides of the same coin. The Vikings understood the world as a place in constant flux, where gods, monsters, and mortals interacted in an endless dance of creation and destruction. The myths were a way to make sense of this world, a way to understand the natural forces, the challenges of survival, and the cycles of life and death. They were stories not just of gods and heroes, but of every Viking who fought to survive in a world that was both beautiful and brutal. As the fire crackles softly in the longhouse, the tales of the gods and their battles echo through the room. The Vikings know that these stories are more than just entertainment. They are the bedrock of their culture, a reminder that they are part of a larger story, one that has been told for generations and will continue long after they are gone. The crackling fire illuminates the longhouse, casting warm shadows on the walls as the sounds of laughter and music fill the air. The feast is in full swing, a celebration of victory, of survival, and of the bonds that tie the Viking people together. After a long and hard-fought battle, or perhaps a successful raid, this is the moment to let go of the weight of the world, to gather with friends and family, and to celebrate the fruits of their labor in the most joyful way they know how, through a grand feast. The tables are laden with food, roasted meats, hearty stews, and thick, crusty bread. The air is thick with the aroma of sizzling meat, rich with the scent of herbs and spices. The Vikings, having spent so much time in the cold, on the move, or in battle, savor this moment, this time when they can indulge in the comforts of home. The roasted boar, tender and golden, is a centerpiece, surrounded by venison, fowl, and fish, each dish more plentiful than the last. The food is simple but satisfying, prepared with care and shared freely among the guests. The warriors sit at the long tables, their faces flushed with warmth and pride, their hands never still as they reach for another bite of meat or tear off a piece of bread. The food is hearty, filling, a reminder of the strength required to bring it to the table. There is no rush, no hurry to finish. The feast is as much about the company as it is about the food. It is a time to sit back, to relax, and to enjoy the fruits of their labor, knowing that the battle is over, at least for now, and the world outside can wait. The mead flows freely, poured into horn cups and wooden mugs, its golden liquid shimmering in the firelight. The drink is strong, sweet with honey, and it warms the soul as much as it warms the body. The Vikings drink deeply, toasting to their victories, to their comrades, to the gods who have guided them through the battle. The clinking of cups, the laughter, the stories shared, and the sounds of celebration fill the longhouse. The mead, like the fire, flows continuously, a symbol of abundance and unity. As the music begins, the mood shifts. The steady beat of the drum sets the rhythm, while the sound of a flute or the strum of a lute fills the air. The melodies simple but full of heart. The songs are old, passed down from generation to generation, telling tales of gods, of heroes, and of battles won. The warriors, their spirits lifted by the music and the drink, begin to sing along, their voices rising in a chorus of triumph and camaraderie. The music is not just for entertainment. It is a vital part of the Viking feast. It is a way to honour the gods, to remember those who fought alongside them, and to pass down the stories of their ancestors. The songs are filled with honour and pride, a reminder that the Viking way is one of strength, resilience, and unity. The sound of the music echoes in the longhouse, a reminder that this moment of joy and celebration is fleeting, but the bonds it strengthens will last forever. As the night wears on, the feast continues. The laughter grows louder, the drink flows even more freely, and the stories grow taller. It is in these moments, in the warmth of the fire and the company of their kin, that the Vikings truly feel alive. They have fought, they have survived, and now they are free to enjoy the fruits of their labour. The feast is a time for relaxation, but also a time for reflection. The warriors, though tired from battle, sit together, sharing stories of their adventures and their struggles. They speak of the enemies they've defeated, of the lands they've conquered, but they also remember those they've lost along the way. A moment of silence falls over the table as they raise their mugs to their fallen comrades, honouring them with a toast, knowing that their spirits are with them, guiding them as they move forward. And so the night unfolds, the fire burning low as the mead continues to flow, the music softening to a quiet hum. The feast winds down, but the sense of community remains. The bonds forged in battle are strengthened here, around the table, in the warmth of the longhouse. The Vikings know that the next day will bring new challenges, new battles to fight, but for tonight they are united in celebration. Tomorrow can wait. The air is heavy with solemnity as the Vikings gather for one of their most sacred rites, the burial of a warrior who has passed. The longhouse, once filled with laughter and music, now stands quiet, its warmth dimmed by the weight of loss. Yet, for all the grief that fills the air, there is an undercurrent of reverence and hope, a belief that death is not an end, but a passage to another world, one where the journey continues in the halls of Valhalla or the peaceful fields of Folkvanga. The body of the departed is carefully prepared for its final voyage. Clad in their finest armour, the warrior is laid upon the ground, their weapons placed at their side. The helmet, often adorned with intricate designs, sits atop their head, a final salute to the warrior's place in the world. The warrior's shield, worn with the marks of battle, rests beside them, a reminder of the countless victories they have won. There is no sorrow in the preparation, only respect. Respect for the life that has been lived, the battles fought, and the legacy left behind. Outside, the air is crisp, the ground hard underfoot from the cold, and a sense of anticipation fills the space. The funeral pyre is already prepared, a large, carefully arranged mound of wood, built high and strong. It is here, amid the gathering of family, friends, and fellow warriors, that the final farewell will take place. The flames will carry the soul of the departed to the gods, where it will be judged and, if worthy, taken to the great halls of the afterlife. As the sun sets, casting a soft glow over the gathered crowd, the ceremony begins. The warriors form a circle around the pyre, the flickering firelight illuminating their faces as they stand in silence. A soft chant begins, low at first, then growing in strength as the voices of the gathered warriors rise together. They speak not just of the departed, but of the warriors' journey, their sacrifices, and the honour they brought to their people. The words are simple, but full of meaning, an offering of respect and a prayer for the soul's safe passage. The pyre is set alight, the flames rising slowly at first, licking at the wood, and then growing, roaring higher with each passing moment. The warmth from the fire spreads, reaching out to the crowd, but it is not the warmth of the fire that consumes them. It is the sense of release, of finality. The body, now wrapped in the embrace of the flames, is consumed, as if the fire itself is guiding the soul to the next world. The crackling of the flames fills the air, the scent of burning wood and sacrifice heavy in the breeze. As the fire burns, the Viking warriors do not turn away. They stand, watching, knowing that this ritual is both an end and a beginning. The warrior's journey does not end with death. It continues in the halls of the gods, in Valhalla, where they will fight and feast until the end of days. The Vikings believe that those who die with honor, those who fall in battle, are granted a place among the gods, where their valor will be forever remembered. For those who are not sent to Valhalla, the journey continues elsewhere. The earth, though cold and unforgiving, is not seen as an end. Instead, the Viking warriors are laid to rest in stone burial mounds, their bodies placed within, surrounded by grave goods, tools, weapons, and sometimes even the horses they once rode. These graves are often found on the hillsides or near the shores, where the warrior's spirit can continue to watch over the land and the sea. The burial mound is not just a resting place, it is a reminder of the warrior's role in the world. The stone markers, sometimes etched with runes, serve as a monument to the legacy of the departed. The warriors who are laid to rest here are not forgotten. Their stories live on in the tales told by the firelight, their deeds immortalized in the songs sung by the bards. The spirit of the warrior is believed to remain close to the land they protected, and those who visit the burial site are reminded of the warrior's sacrifice and strength. As the fire slowly dies down, the ashes of the departed are gathered and placed in a small urn to be kept by the family or laid to rest at the foot of the burial mound. The funeral is not a time of despair. It is a time of remembrance, a time to honor the life that has passed and to celebrate the journey that continues. The family and the warriors gather once more, their heads bowed in respect, but their hearts light with the knowledge that the departed warrior is not truly gone. They are simply on another journey, one that will carry them into the realms of the gods. The night settles around the longhouse, the fire burning low in the hearth, and the warriors who remain take solace in the quiet comfort of each other's company. Though they know the hardships of life, they also know the strength that comes from standing together, from honoring those who came before them. In the Viking world, death is not an end. It is simply another passage, another step on the journey through the realms, where the brave live on forever. In the heart of the Viking community, where the fire burns low and the scent of wood smoke lingers in the air, there is a place for justice. A place where the rules of the land are upheld and decisions that shape the future are made. The law of the Vikings is not written in scrolls or books. It is passed down through generations, spoken from the lips of those entrusted with wisdom and experience. The law is simple, but its power is rooted in tradition, honor, and the belief that the well-being of the community is paramount. At the center of Viking law is the Jarl, a leader chosen for their strength, wisdom, and ability to guide the people through both times of peace and conflict. The Jarl is not a tyrant, but a protector, someone who ensures that justice is served fairly and that the laws of the land are respected. They do not rule alone, however. The Thing, or assembly, is a central part of Viking society, a council where the free men and women gather to voice their opinions, share their grievances, and make important decisions that affect the whole community. The Thing is a place of discussion, not confrontation. Here, under the open sky or in the Great Hall, all members of the community, regardless of their status, are given a chance to speak. The law is not simply about punishment. It is about fairness, balance, and ensuring that each individual's rights are respected. The decisions made by the Thing are often unanimous, forged from the understanding that the health of the community depends on the collective will. When disputes arise, they are settled not by violence, but through discussion and negotiation. The Thing listens to both sides of the argument, the accused and the accuser, and the elders, those who have lived long enough to understand the nuances of justice, offer their guidance. If necessary, A blood feud may be settled in this way, where reparations are made and the honour of both parties is preserved. It is in these moments, where emotions run high, that the strength of the Viking law is most evident. It is not about revenge, it is about resolution, ensuring that each side leaves with their dignity intact. The system of law extends beyond the thing itself. The Vikings, though fierce in battle, understand the value of peace and order within their own ranks. A crime, whether theft, assault or betrayal, can disrupt the delicate balance of the community. The law is not merely enforced by the Jarl, but by all members of the society who are responsible for upholding the values of fairness and respect. Even the lowliest of farmers or the humblest of craftsmen are expected to abide by these laws, and any infringement upon them is met with the same gravity, regardless of one's social standing. One of the most important aspects of Viking law is oath-taking. A promise made is sacred, and breaking an oath is seen as a grave dishonour. The Vikings believe that their word is their bond, and the breaking of a promise is not only a breach of trust between individuals, it is a violation of the very laws that govern their society. To swear an oath is to bind oneself to the community, to the gods, and to the truth. And when an oath is broken, the consequences are severe. The guilty party may be forced into exile, stripped of their title, or even forced to pay reparations for their actions. However, Viking law is not only about punishment, it is also about restitution. If someone is wronged, there is a process for compensation. If a man's cattle are stolen, for example, the thief must repay the loss with another herd. Or if a person is harmed in a dispute, compensation must be made. The idea is not to escalate violence, but to restore balance, to ensure that the wronged party is made whole again. This system of compensation, known as vergild, allows for disputes to be resolved without unnecessary bloodshed. The thing is also a place for more than just settling disputes. It is a place for decisions that shape the future of the Viking people. When it comes time to make decisions on matters of war, land disputes, or matters of the gods, the community gathers at the thing to discuss and decide. The Jarl may lead the discussion, but it is the collective will of the people that ultimately determines the outcome. These decisions, made through careful consideration, shape the future of the Viking society and ensure that the balance of power remains in the hands of the people, not a single ruler. The Viking law, though simple in its structure, is built on the principles of fairness, honour and respect. It is a system that values the well-being of the community, and the strength of the individual is tied to the strength of the whole. The law is not about domination, it is about ensuring that justice is served and that peace is maintained in a world that is often unpredictable, dangerous and full of challenges. As the fire burns low and the last of the day's light fades into night, the thing comes to an end. The decisions have been made, the disputes settled, and the Vikings return to their homes with the sense that they are part of something larger than themselves, a community bound together by the strength of its laws, its customs, and its shared purpose. The laws of the Vikings are not simply rules to be followed, they are a reflection of their values, their identity, and the life they have chosen to live. The wind whispers through the tall grasses as the Vikings' longships rest upon the shore, their sails furled and their wooden hulls lined with the scars of many journeys. But the world of the Viking people was not solely one of raiding, conquest and exploration. In the quiet ebb and flow of their bustling coastal settlements, another side of their legacy emerged, the world of trade, exchange, and the pursuit of wealth. The Vikings, though known for their fierce raids and swift conquests, were also master traders, forging connections with distant lands and bringing back treasures from the farthest corners of the known world. Viking trade was an intricate web, spanning lands far and wide, from the shores of the British Isles to the bustling markets of the Byzantine Empire and the Arab world. They navigated the seas not just for plunder, but to engage in commerce, exchanging the goods of their homeland, fur, amber, iron and timber, for exotic luxuries, fine fabrics, spices and silver. The Vikings' reach was vast, and their goods were highly sought after by the peoples they encountered. On the bustling docks of Hedeby, a key Viking trading hub, merchants and travellers from all over Europe and beyond would gather. Ships laden with goods from the east and west arrived and departed with regularity, their cargoes exchanged in a constant flow of commerce. Vikings were known for their skill in trading, understanding the value of rare items and the importance of building relationships with the people they encountered. They did not simply take from others, they shared their wealth, fostering trade networks that spanned across continents. The Viking merchants were no strangers to the intricacies of trade, and their presence was felt in places far from their northern homeland. They travelled through Francia, where they exchanged their iron for silver, through the Slavic lands, where furs and skins were coveted, and to the lands of the Byzantine Empire, where the exotic silks and spices were traded for Viking goods. The Vikings were not only traders of goods, but also of ideas. Their presence in these faraway lands led to cultural exchanges, where their knowledge of shipbuilding, navigation, and craftsmanship had a lasting impact on the regions they visited. One of the most remarkable aspects of Viking trade was their interaction with the Arab world. In the bustling markets of Baghdad and Cairo, Vikings were well-known traders, exchanging the raw materials of the north for the fine products of the east. Arabic coins were found in Viking graves, and in return Vikings brought back luxury goods like glass, spices and textiles. This trade helped to weave the Vikings into the fabric of a larger, interconnected world, one that was based not only on conquest, but also on the exchange of goods, cultures and knowledge. Yet, even as they traded and built relationships with foreign cultures, the Vikings never forgot the importance of the wealth that could be found at home. The land itself provided much of what they needed: timber for building ships, iron for crafting weapons, and furs and hides for trade. They were expert artisans, turning these raw materials into objects of great value: beautiful jewellery, finely crafted swords, and intricate carvings that were highly prized both at home and abroad. The Viking world was not simply one of raids and warfare, it was one of community, craftsmanship, and trade. Wealth was not just measured by the amount of treasure hoarded, but by the connections made and the goods exchanged. It was through trade that the Vikings were able to spread their influence, bringing the culture of the north to distant lands and bringing back the richness of the wider world to their people. And as the longships sailed once again across the seas, their holds filled with precious cargo, the Vikings knew that their legacy was more than that of warriors and conquerors. They were also traders, bringing the world together, one exchange at a time. The wealth they accumulated through their trade was not just in gold and silver, but in the relationships they forged and the knowledge they gained from distant lands. They were, in many ways, the conduits through which the cultures of Europe, Asia, and the Middle East met, and in doing so, they left an enduring mark on the world, a legacy of trade, wealth, and a broader vision of the interconnected world. As the ships returned to their homes laden with goods, their crew members would gather by the fire, their treasures not only a reflection of their success, but also a symbol of the enduring Viking spirit. They were a people who understood the value of both strength and diplomacy, of war and trade, and in this balance, they created a world that would be remembered for centuries to come. In the quiet corners of Viking society, amidst the stories of glory and conquest, there lies a less celebrated aspect of their way of life, the practice of slavery. It is a system that, though not unique to the Vikings, played a role in their daily lives, shaping the dynamics of their communities in subtle and significant ways. For the Vikings, slaves, known as thralls, were an integral part of the social and economic structure, though their lives were defined by a different, harsher reality than that of the free men and women. The thralls were often prisoners taken during raids or captured from other lands. In the Viking world, where power was frequently measured by one's ability to conquer and expand, the capturing of slaves was seen as both a practical and symbolic extension of a successful raid. To take captives, to add them to the growing wealth of the Viking household, was to solidify one's place in the warrior society. The slaves themselves, often from the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms or from distant lands such as Slavic regions or the Middle East, were treated as property, valued for their labour, but stripped of the freedom that others in Viking society took for granted. Once brought back to the Viking lands, the thralls were put to work. The work they performed was varied and essential to the household, from tending to the livestock and working the fields to serving as personal attendants or performing the menial tasks that allowed Viking families to thrive. These thralls were tasked with the jobs that required labour and strength, but often went unnoticed by the free members of society. In return for their labour, they were provided with food and shelter, but their lives were shaped by a lack of autonomy, bound by the whims of their owners. The life of a thrall was one of submission, but it was not without possibility. There were times when thralls could gain their freedom either through acts of service, purchase, or by being freed as a reward for loyalty or exceptional effort. However, this was not common, and most thralls lived and died in the same status they had been born into, mere property with few rights and little recourse. Despite this harsh reality, there were moments when the relationship between masters and thralls was more complex than mere ownership. While the thralls were considered less than free men and women, they were still a part of the Viking family, and often formed strong, sometimes even familial bonds with those who lived alongside them. In the quiet moments of daily life, a thrall might find themselves working side by side with the free members of the household, participating in the daily rhythms of life, sharing meals, and taking part in the small moments of connection that shaped the community. Yet, the power dynamics were always present. The Vikings, while they respected strength and valour in battle, did not view the thralls as equals. They were a reminder of the brutal realities of the Viking way of life, where survival, power, and conquest were paramount, and those who were captured in battle were forced to serve. While the Vikings' raids brought wealth and treasures to their lands, they also brought with them a system of inequality that defined the lives of many. The thralls, often seen as mere commodities, lived in the shadows of the grand tales of Viking heroes and warriors. Yet, their labour and presence were essential to the functioning of the Viking economy. Without them, the vast farms, the grand longhouses, and the warrior families that filled the Viking world would not have flourished. In the longhouse, amidst the songs and stories, the thralls would quietly work, their lives marked by the same seasonal rhythms as the rest of the Viking world, yet separated by an invisible wall that divided them from the free people around them. Their existence was quiet, their struggles often hidden from the stories sung by the bards, but they were a part of the fabric of Viking society nonetheless, a reminder of the complexities and contradictions of a world built on strength, survival, and conquest. The system of slavery in Viking society was not as institutionalized as in some other parts of the world, but it was nonetheless a significant part of their lives. Thralls were often exchanged, traded, or used as a form of wealth or payment. They were part of the Viking economy, a living reminder of the price of conquest. And yet, like the very landscape in which they lived, their lives were shaped by the forces of nature, by the will of the gods, by the cold winds, and by the ceaseless march of time. Nestled in the vast, open expanse of the Viking lands, the village stands quiet and steadfast against the changing seasons. It is a small community, humble in size, yet full of life and purpose. The scent of the earth, damp from the early morning dew, rises in the cool air as the sun slowly begins to warm the day. Here, in this peaceful corner of the world, the heart of Viking society beats quietly, not with the roar of battle or the clash of swords, but with the steady rhythm of daily work, survival, and community. The village is centered around the farmers, the lifeblood of the Viking world. These men and women rise early, their hands rough and calloused from years of tilling the earth, planting seeds, and harvesting crops. The fields stretch out before them, green and fertile in the spring and summer, and golden and rich with grain as the harvest approaches. Their work is never ending, driven by the rhythms of the land and the need to provide for the community. The life of a Viking farmer is simple but demanding. Each day is spent working the soil, ploughing, sowing, and tending to the crops that will feed the village through the harsh winter months. There is no room for laziness here. Every member of the family contributes, whether it's planting the first seeds of spring, or gathering the last of the harvest before the frost comes. The work is hard, but it is a labour of love, a dedication to the land that sustains them and the people they care for. The fields are alive with activity. Children run between the rows of crops, their laughter mingling with the sound of the wind rustling through the tall grass. The women, too, are hard at work, collecting herbs, preserving vegetables, and ensuring that there is enough food to last through the long winter months. The work is often done in silence, but it is not a lonely silence. It is a shared silence, a quiet understanding that every action, no matter how small, contributes to the survival of the village. Alongside the farmers, there are the craftsmen, the makers of tools, weapons, and other necessities that keep the village running. The blacksmith's forge hums with the rhythmic sound of the hammer striking the anvil, the heat of the fire casting a warm glow over the workshop. The blacksmith, his hands skilled from years of practice, shapes the iron into tools that will be used in every corner of the village: axes, ploughs, knives, and nails. The smell of hot metal and the sound of the hammer ringing against the anvil are constant companions to the craftsman's work. The woodworkers, too, are essential to the village. Their workshops are filled with the scent of freshly cut timber, the air filled with the sound of saws and axes carving the wood into beams, planks, and furniture. The wooden tools and buildings they create are both functional and beautiful, shaped with care to withstand the elements. The woodworkers' hands work tirelessly, crafting everything from the sturdy beams that support the longhouses to the delicate carvings that adorn Viking shields. The village, though small, is a microcosm of the Viking world. Everyone has their role, and each role is essential to the well-being of the community. There is no hierarchy here, no king, no noble lords, just a shared understanding that everyone's work is valued and necessary. From the farmer who tends the fields to the craftsman who shapes the tools, each person plays a vital part in ensuring the survival and prosperity of the village. The heart of the village is the community. In the evenings, as the day's work winds down, the villagers gather together. The longhouse, warm and inviting, becomes the centre of life. The fire burns brightly, casting a soft light on the faces of the people who have worked side by side all day. The sound of laughter fills the air as stories are told and plans are made for the future. It is here, in the comfort of the longhouse, that the bonds of the Viking people are strengthened, not by the clash of weapons, but by the shared experiences of daily life. The villagers speak of their dreams and hopes for the future, their voices full of determination and resolve. They know that survival is not guaranteed, that the winters can be harsh, and the raids from enemies may come at any time. But for now, in this moment, there is peace. There is food, warmth, and the knowledge that they are not alone. They are a family, bound together by the land they work, the fire that warms them, and the community that sustains them. As night falls, the stars begin to appear, twinkling in the sky above. The village quiets, the sounds of the day fading into a gentle stillness. The work will begin again tomorrow, and the village will continue its rhythm, with each person playing their part in the greater whole. The life of the Viking village may be humble, but it is one of deep connection, both to the land and to each other. In the quiet moments of the longhouse, when the fire burns low and the last of the mead is poured, the Vikings would often speak of the world beyond the shores of their homeland. It was a world filled with mystery and possibility. Vast, untamed lands waiting to be explored. To the Viking mind, the world was not a place to be feared, but one to be discovered. Their ships, long and sleek, carried them across oceans through storms and unknown waters in search of new lands, new opportunities, and new stories to tell. The Vikings were not merely raiders and warriors, they were explorers, navigators, and adventurers. Their ships, crafted with skill and precision, were designed for both battle and exploration. The longship, with its shallow draft, could navigate rivers and coastal waters, while its sleek design allowed it to cut through the open sea. These ships were their gateway to the world beyond, their key to unlocking the mysteries of the lands far and wide. The first great voyage of exploration took the Vikings to Iceland, a land of fire and ice. The journey across the North Atlantic was not for the faint-hearted. The seas were treacherous, the winds unforgiving. Yet, the Vikings, with their steadfast resolve and their deep knowledge of the sea, made the journey. When they arrived, they found a land rich with volcanic activity, vast glaciers, and fertile soil. Iceland, with its rugged beauty and wild landscapes, became a place where the Vikings could build a new life, far from the troubles of the mainland. From Iceland, the Vikings ventured further west, across the open ocean, reaching the shores of Greenland. It was a harsh and unforgiving land, its icy terrain and short summers making life difficult. But to the Vikings, it was another challenge to conquer, another land to tame. The settlement they established in Greenland would become a key outpost in their exploration of the New World. Though life there was tough, it was a testament to the Viking spirit, a spirit that never wavered, no matter how difficult the journey. But perhaps the most extraordinary of the Viking voyages was their journey to North America, long before other Europeans would set foot on the continent. Led by the daring explorer Leif Erikson, the Vikings crossed the North Atlantic, navigating the wild, uncharted waters of the western seas. Their destination was the land they called Vinland, a place that would later be identified as part of the eastern coast of what is now Canada. Vinland was a place of abundance, where the Vikings found forests full of timber, rivers teeming with fish, and fertile soil ready for cultivation. It was a land that seemed to offer everything they needed to thrive, a land where they could create new homes far from the crowded shores of Europe. Yet, despite the promise of this new world, the Vikings did not remain in Vinland for long. The challenges of living so far from their homeland, coupled with conflicts with the indigenous peoples they encountered, led to the abandonment of their settlement. For the Vikings, exploration was not just about conquest. It was about the thrill of discovery, the desire to push beyond the known world, and the need to find new opportunities for survival. Their journeys were not easy, and the lands they found were not always kind, but their voyages changed the course of history. The Vikings were the first known Europeans to set foot in North America, centuries before Columbus would make his journey across the ocean. These explorations, though long forgotten by many, are a testament to the Viking spirit of adventure and curiosity. They were not content to simply stay within the borders of their homeland. They sought new horizons, new lands to conquer, and new challenges to overcome. The Vikings were as much explorers as they were warriors, and their voyages laid the groundwork for the future of European exploration. As the fire crackles softly in the longhouse, the Vikings of today may look back on these ancient voyages with pride. The world they inhabited was vast, and they were not content to sit idle. They ventured far beyond the familiar shores of Scandinavia, seeking new lands, new opportunities, and a legacy that would endure through the ages. Their journey was not just a physical one. It was a journey of the spirit, a quest for knowledge, discovery, and the belief that the world was theirs to explore. On quiet, cold nights in the far reaches of the Viking world, when the winter's chill settles deep into the bones and the darkness seems endless, the sky would suddenly come alive. The air would hum with a strange energy, and the heavens themselves would dance in swirls of green, purple, and gold. The northern lights, or aurora borealis, were a natural wonder that captivated the Viking imagination. To them, these brilliant displays in the night sky were more than just a spectacle. They were a divine sign, a message from the gods themselves. The Vikings, who had long believed that the natural world was full of spiritual meaning and divine presence, saw the northern lights as a reflection of the gods' power and favour. When the lights flickered and shimmered across the dark sky, the Vikings would gather in awe, looking up at the colours that seemed to swirl and stretch across the heavens like a living tapestry. For them, it was a cosmic event, something to be revered and respected. Odin, the All-Father, was often associated with the northern lights. The Vikings believed that the lights were the reflection of his mighty hall, Valhalla, where the bravest of warriors feasted and fought for eternity. In their minds, the shimmering lights in the sky were the spirits of fallen warriors, marching onward to their place in Valhalla, their shields held high as they made their way to the gods. The lights were seen as a kind of celestial pathway, an ethereal bridge between the mortal world and the divine realm of the gods. There were other stories too about the meaning behind the northern lights. Some believed they were the flickering lights of the Valkyries, the warrior maidens who chose those who would die in battle and brought them to Valhalla. In these tales, the lights were the armor and shields of these mighty women, glinting in the sky as they rode across the heavens. To the Viking people, the sight of the aurora was a reminder of the Valkyries' watchful eyes and the connection between the living and the dead. The lights were not just a source of wonder, they were seen as a powerful omen, a sign that the gods were watching over the Vikings. To witness the aurora was to feel the presence of something far greater than oneself, a reminder that the world was governed by forces beyond mortal control, and that the gods were always close, their influence ever present. The northern lights, in their brilliant, unpredictable beauty, were seen as a divine blessing, a sign of protection, guidance, and favour. At the same time, the Viking people were deeply respectful of the northern lights. They did not take their beauty for granted. They believed that the lights were a gift, and that they needed to be treated with reverence. The Vikings would often offer prayers or sacrifices when the lights appeared, thanking the gods for their blessings and asking for protection. In this way, the aurora was not just a natural phenomenon, but a spiritual one, a reminder of the sacred bond between the Viking people and the divine world above. In some ways, the northern lights represented the very essence of Viking life, both awe-inspiring and unpredictable. Just as the lights could appear suddenly, flickering brightly in the night sky, so too could the fortunes of the Viking people change. The winds could turn, the tides could shift, and the battle could be lost or won in the blink of an eye. Yet, like the aurora, there was beauty in this uncertainty. There was a sense of wonder in the unknown, a belief that everything, even the most difficult and challenging moments, held a divine purpose. As the lights danced across the sky, painting the darkness with hues of green and purple, the Viking people would stand in silence, feeling a deep connection to the world beyond. The night would feel infinite, the coldness of the world momentarily forgotten, as they watched the lights pulse and shimmer in the heavens. It was a reminder that the Viking world was not just one of battle and survival, but one full of magic, mystery, and divine connection, a world where the gods were never truly far away, where they watched, listened, and guided the fate of those who honoured them. Beneath the vast, unbroken sky, the Viking longship cuts through the waves with an elegance that belies its purpose. It is not just a vessel, it is a tool of exploration, a means of adventure, and a testament to the Viking mastery of the seas. The art of sailing, perfected over generations, is woven into the fabric of Viking society. It is not just about crossing the water, it is about reading the signs of the natural world, the stars, the currents, and the winds, and using them to guide the way. The Vikings, though skilled in battle, were just as skilled in navigation. They knew the sea as well as they knew the land, perhaps even better. Their longships, designed for both speed and versatility, allowed them to sail across the oceans, exploring lands far beyond their own shores. The sleek, shallow drafted vessels could navigate both deep waters and coastal shallows, making them ideal for everything from coastal raids to long-distance exploration. At night, when the world around them seemed to fade into darkness, the Vikings relied on the stars to guide their way. The night sky was their map, and the stars their compass. They would use the position of Polaris, the North Star, to stay on course, its steady light guiding them across the vast, dark ocean. To the Vikings, Polaris was not just a navigational tool, it was a constant in an otherwise unpredictable world. It remained fixed in the sky, a reliable point of reference, always shining through the night. The sailors would measure the angle of the star's position, using it to determine their latitude and direction. This knowledge was passed down orally, carefully guarded and learned by heart, an essential part of Viking sailing tradition. During the day, the sun provided a different kind of guidance. The Vikings knew how to use its position to track the time and direction, and they understood the rhythms of the sea, how the tides moved, how the currents flowed, and how these natural forces could either help or hinder their journey. The currents, those invisible highways of the sea, were crucial to Viking navigation. By understanding the patterns of the water, they could make their travels faster and more efficient. In many ways, the Vikings viewed the ocean as a companion, a force to be respected, but also something that could be mastered with the right knowledge and skill. The sailing technique itself was an art, a delicate balance of harnessing the power of the wind and steering the ship with precision. The longship sail, made from sturdy cloth, would catch the wind as it blew across the open ocean, propelling the ship forward with force. The rudder at the back of the ship was used to steer, and the crew would work together, adjusting the sail and rudder to catch the wind just right. It was a dance, a rhythm of action and reaction, of wind and water, of crew and ship moving as one. In the quiet moments of the voyage, when the wind is steady and the ship moves with grace, the Viking sailors would rely on their experience, on their instincts. The seasoned sailors could feel the subtle shifts in the wind, the changes in the current, and even the temperature of the water, all of which told them where they were and where they were going. Their knowledge of the sea was both practical and intuitive, honed through years of sailing and experience. And yet, despite their skill and knowledge, Viking sailors also understood that the sea was unpredictable. Storms could appear out of nowhere, and the winds could change direction without warning. They had to be prepared for the unexpected, always alert, always ready to adapt. The Vikings were not just sailors, they were survivors, able to read the signs of the natural world and use them to their advantage. Their longships were built for strength and speed, but the true strength of the Viking sailor lay in their deep understanding of the ocean. The Viking way of sailing was passed down from generation to generation, a legacy of craftsmanship, knowledge, and determination. It was not just about reaching a destination, it was about the journey itself, the experience of travelling across the unknown, discovering new lands, and seeing the world from the bow of the longship. To the Vikings, the sea was both a challenge and a gateway, an essential part of their identity and their culture. They understood that in order to survive and thrive, they needed to master both the land and the sea, to read the natural world like an open book. As the longship sails into the horizon, with the waves gently lapping at its sides and the wind filling its sail, there is a quiet sense of pride. The Vikings have conquered the seas, and in doing so, they have conquered the world itself, expanding their horizons, discovering new lands, and carrying their legacy across the oceans, guided by the stars, the wind, and their own unshakable will. In the quiet stillness of the longhouse, after the laughter has faded and the fire has burned low, the Viking mind often wanders to the vast, unseen world beyond. The stars overhead, the winds that blow across the sea, and the mysteries of life and death all connect through one ancient, sacred symbol, the World Tree, known to the Vikings as Yggdrasil. The tree, vast and eternal, stood at the centre of the cosmos, its roots and branches spreading out to link the realms of gods, men, and all that exists. Yggdrasil is not just a tree in the literal sense, but a living, breathing symbol of the interconnectedness of all things. It is the centre of everything, the axis of the world. Imagine a giant towering ash tree, its trunk thick and sturdy, reaching up towards the heavens. Its branches stretch out far and wide, touching the 9 realms that make up the universe. The roots of Yggdrasil burrow deep into the earth, spreading into the roots of time itself, grounding the world in the cycle of life and death. To the Vikings, Yggdrasil was more than just a tree. It was the embodiment of the universe itself, a connection between the different worlds. It tied together Asgard, the home of the gods, Midgard, the world of humans, and Jotunheim, the land of the giants, along with many other realms. Each of these worlds was connected by the tree's mighty trunk and roots, and the Vikings believed that everything, the gods, the creatures, and even the elements of nature, was linked through the mighty Yggdrasil. The trunk of the world tree was thought to be the axis, around which the entire world spun. It stood tall and unwavering, symbolizing the strength and endurance of the cosmos. At its very peak, Asgard, the realm of the gods, was said to sit. From there, the gods looked down upon the world, their watchful eyes keeping order over the realms. To the Vikings, Yggdrasil was more than a physical entity. It was the source of all life, growth, and wisdom. The roots of the tree deep in the earth connected to the very foundations of existence. One of these roots dipped into Niflheim, the realm of ice and mist, where the primordial forces of creation began. Another root stretched into Helheim, the land of the dead, where those who did not die in battle were believed to find their final resting place. These roots symbolized the constant cycle of life and death, where creation and destruction were not separate forces, but parts of a greater, eternal whole. In the shade of the world tree, the Vikings believed that the forces of fate and destiny were at play. Beneath its branches sat the Norns, 3 sisters who controlled the fates of all beings, weaving the threads of life and death. The Norns sat by the well of Urd, drawing from its waters to shape the fates of gods and men alike. Every Viking knew that their own destiny was shaped by these unseen forces, their paths woven together like the threads of a grand tapestry, each person's life connected to the larger world by the roots of Yggdrasil. Yet, Yggdrasil was not only a symbol of life, but also of the trials and sacrifices necessary for growth. Its branches high above were home to creatures that both helped and hindered the gods. Among these, the great eagle perched at the top of the tree, its sharp eyes scanning the realms below. Beneath the tree's roots, the serpent Nidhogg gnawed at the roots of the world tree, seeking to destroy it. This constant tension between creation and destruction, between growth and decay, was a reminder to the Vikings of the fragile balance of life. In their minds, Yggdrasil was a living force, one that both nurtured and tested all who relied on it. For the Vikings, the concept of Yggdrasil was deeply rooted in their understanding of the world. The tree symbolized not just their connection to the gods, but their place in the cosmos. They saw themselves as living in harmony with nature, with the tree as their guide and protector. The world tree was both a literal and spiritual beacon, showing the way between realms and providing them with the knowledge that their existence was part of a much larger interconnected cycle. The Vikings often saw their world as a place of constant change, yet Yggdrasil remained ever constant, a reminder that through all the trials, the struggles and the victories of life, there was something bigger, something eternal that connected them all. In times of peace and war, life and death, they could look to the tree for guidance, knowing that as long as they remained rooted in their traditions and beliefs, they were part of something far greater than themselves. And so, as the fire in the longhouse crackles softly, the Vikings sit quietly, their thoughts turning inward. Yggdrasil, the world tree, was a symbol of their existence, a reminder that their lives were interconnected with the gods, with the land, and with the eternal flow of time. It was a tree of wisdom, of fate, and of life, standing firm through the ages, unchanging amidst the winds of change. As the fire flickers low in the longhouse and the quiet hum of the village settles into the evening, the winds of change begin to stir in the Viking world. The world they once knew, vast, wild, and full of endless opportunity, was slowly transforming, shaped by the forces of history and the expansion of other peoples. The Viking Age, a period of bold exploration and conquest, was coming to an end, and the once unshakable power of the Viking raiders and settlers began to face challenges from beyond the horizons. The winds that had carried the Vikings across the seas, bringing them to distant lands like Iceland, Greenland, and North America, now carried news of a changing world. The tides of history were shifting, and with them came new threats, new alliances, and new ways of life. The once feared Viking raiders, who had struck terror into the hearts of their enemies, now found themselves on the receiving end of conquest and expansion from powerful kingdoms. One of the most significant changes came from the rise of the Christian Church. Christianity, which had slowly been spreading through Europe, began to take root in Viking lands. Kings and chieftains, once bound by the old gods, were now finding their allegiances drawn to the teachings of Christ. Missionaries travelled to the remote shores of the north, and over time, Viking communities began to convert to Christianity, abandoning many of their old ways in favour of a new faith. This shift was not just religious, it was cultural. The Vikings, once proud polytheists with their own pantheon of gods, now found their beliefs and rituals challenged by the arrival of a foreign religion that demanded not only spiritual change, but social and political transformation. In the face of this change, the Viking world began to adapt. Some clans resisted, holding on to the old ways, refusing to bow to the influence of the new faith. Others embraced it, seeing in Christianity a path to stability, alliances with powerful Christian kingdoms, and perhaps even a chance to secure their legacy in a changing world. The Viking warriors, who had once believed in the power of Odin, Thor, and Freya, now found themselves wrestling with new beliefs, navigating the complexities of a world that was rapidly evolving. The once unstoppable force of the Viking raiders began to wane as kingdoms grew stronger and more organized. Charlemagne and other European rulers had risen to power, consolidating lands and forming alliances that the Vikings could no longer easily disrupt. The shield walls that had once been their hallmark now faced armies that were just as skilled and better equipped. The Vikings, who had struck fear into the hearts of kings and queens across Europe, now found themselves on the defensive, fighting to hold on to their lands and way of life. Another shift came with the consolidation of power within Viking kingdoms themselves. The idea of the king or jarl as a central authority began to take hold. Previously, Viking society had been more decentralized, with local chieftains wielding the power in smaller communities. But as larger kingdoms like Denmark and Norway solidified their rule, the structure of Viking society began to change. With the rise of more centralized monarchies, the old ways of raiding, where individual warriors had more freedom and independence, were replaced by a more organized, controlled system of governance. This shift was not just political, it was economic as well. The Viking world had always been a world of trade, with Viking merchants bringing furs, amber and iron to distant lands, and bringing back treasures and goods from places as far away as the Byzantine Empire and the Arab world. But as Europe grew more interconnected, the old Viking trading routes were replaced by more established systems of commerce. The once vibrant trade routes that had been the lifeblood of Viking society were now being overshadowed by the growing influence of new trading powers. Despite these changes, the legacy of the Vikings did not vanish with the passing of the Viking Age. Their impact on the world, on Europe, on exploration, on trade, and on culture remained profound. Even as they faced the pressures of external forces, their spirit of adventure, their craftsmanship, and their stories lived on. The Viking legacy would not be erased, it would be transformed and integrated into the world around them. As the centuries passed, the descendants of the Vikings continued to shape the world in new ways. The cultural influence of the Vikings spread, not just in their homeland, but across Europe, particularly in places like Normandy and France, where Viking settlers eventually became rulers, and in England, where Viking blood ran through the veins of some of the kings. The enduring legacy of the Vikings can be seen in the language, the place names, and the culture that they left behind. But the Viking world, like all worlds, changed with the flow of time. The warriors who once sailed into battle under the banners of Odin now found themselves living in a world where the boundaries between the old and new ways were blurred. Their raids, their conquests, and their exploration gave way to a new era of settlement, diplomacy, and governance. And yet, their legacy, forged in the fires of the north and carried across the oceans, still stands as a testament to their strength, their courage, and their unyielding desire to explore the world. The fire crackles softly in the longhouse, casting a warm glow over the gathered villagers. Outside, the wind howls, a reminder of the world beyond, but inside, there is peace. The Vikings, who had once ruled the seas and forged their legacy in the hearts of distant lands, now find themselves facing a changing world. The very things that once made them a mighty force, their raiding, their independence, and their fierce warrior spirit, are now being tested by forces both external and internal. The Viking Age, a time of exploration, conquest, and adventure, is slowly drawing to a close. The world outside their homeland has grown stronger. Charlemagne, the powerful ruler of the Carolingian Empire, has united much of Europe under his banner, bringing an end to the Viking raids that once terrorized the coasts of France, Spain, and England. The once untamed waters, where the Vikings had sailed freely, are now controlled by kingdoms and fleets that are organized and formidable. The lands that the Vikings had once plundered are now fortified, their cities and castles rising higher, stronger, and more impenetrable. But it is not just external forces that are eroding the Viking way of life. Within their own society, the winds of change are blowing. The old ways of raiding, of plundering the riches of others, are beginning to give way to a new order. The rise of centralized kingdoms, Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, means that the once loose, decentralized system of Viking chieftains is now being replaced by powerful kings. These kings, eager to consolidate their power, no longer need to rely on the old Viking traditions of raiding and pillaging. Instead, they turn their focus to diplomacy, trade, and alliances. The Viking warrior, once free to roam the seas and claim what they could, now finds themselves bound by the laws and rules of their kings. The sense of independence that had defined Viking society is slowly being replaced by a more structured, governed way of life. The warriors, once celebrated for their ability to forge their own path, now find themselves part of a larger kingdom, their power diminished in the face of the growing influence of centralized monarchies. Christianity also plays a pivotal role in the decline of the Viking Age. The faith that had once been seen as a distant and foreign belief system is now firmly rooted in Viking lands. The influence of the Christian church grows, its reach extending into the hearts and minds of the Viking people. The old gods, once central to Viking life and belief, are now being slowly replaced by the teachings of Christ. The Thing, the gathering of warriors and free men that once decided the fate of the community, is now increasingly influenced by Christian leaders who bring with them a new set of moral and social values. This change in faith is not just religious, it's cultural. The Viking warrior, who once fought in the name of Odin and Thor, now faces the idea of living a life that is governed by the Christian principles of peace, forgiveness, and humility. The raiding parties, once an essential part of Viking society, are now seen as sinful, their violent ways at odds with the new order. Many of the Viking chiefs and kings, seeking to maintain their power and legitimacy, convert to Christianity, further solidifying the decline of the old ways. And so, the Viking Age fades, slowly but inevitably, as the world around them changes. The once proud longships, which had carried them across the seas to distant lands, now find themselves relegated to the past, replaced by new forms of travel and trade. The Viking warriors, once the terror of Europe, are now finding themselves caught between two worlds, between the old ways of war and conquest, and the new ways of governance and religion. The final blow to the Viking Age comes not from an external force, but from within. The old Viking lifestyle, once so vital and vibrant, is no longer sustainable in the face of these changing times. The raids that once brought wealth and power are no longer viable, and the Viking people must adapt to the shifting tides of history. They become settlers, traders, and farmers, learning to live within the kingdoms they once sought to conquer. But even in the face of this decline, the legacy of the Vikings remains. The stories of their raids, their adventures, and their conquests are passed down through generations, their names remembered in the sagas that are sung around the fire. The Vikings may have lost their power, but they left an indelible mark on the world. They paved the way for exploration, for trade, and for the exchange of ideas between East and West. Their courage, their ingenuity, and their spirit of adventure continue to inspire those who look back on their remarkable age. As the fire fades and the village settles into silence, the Vikings may no longer sail the seas as they once did, but their legacy lives on, woven into the fabric of history, a testament to a people who dared to explore, to conquer, and to dream. The longships, once the embodiment of Viking strength and spirit, no longer cut through the waves with the same speed and grace that had once carried them across distant shores. The sound of oars slicing through the water, the flutter of sails catching the wind, and the sight of those mighty ships, sleek, powerful, and designed for both battle and exploration, had once been a common sight on the seas. But as the years passed and the tides of time shifted, the era of the longship slowly began to fade, giving way to a new chapter in Viking history. The longships had been more than just vessels. They were symbols of Viking prowess, innovation, and ambition. Crafted with unparalleled skill, their shallow draft allowed them to navigate both open seas and narrow rivers with ease, making them perfect for raiding, trading, and exploration. The dragon-headed prows and intricate carvings told stories of gods and warriors, of battles won and lost, of voyages that spanned oceans. These ships had been the vessels of the Vikings' greatest achievements, whether they were launching a raid on the coast of England, setting sail for the distant shores of Greenland, or navigating the waters of North America long before other Europeans would. But as time wore on, the world changed. The longships, once essential to the Vikings' way of life, found themselves outpaced by new technologies and new ways of living. The rise of larger, more powerful ships built for trade and exploration marked the beginning of the end for the longships. While they had been the ultimate expression of Viking maritime mastery, they were no longer suited to the demands of a rapidly changing world. The most significant shift came with the growing dominance of more advanced shipbuilding techniques. The Vikings, who had once been the masters of the seas, now found themselves facing an era of steam and iron. Ships were becoming larger, sturdier, and capable of carrying far more cargo and people. The longships, built for speed and agility rather than cargo capacity, could no longer compete with these new vessels, which were better suited for the expanded trade routes and the increasingly complex demands of the emerging European kingdoms. The rise of naval fleets in the service of powerful monarchies also contributed to the decline of the longship. While Viking society had been built around decentralized leadership, with chieftains and warriors who made their own decisions, the growing influence of kings and centralized governments changed the landscape of naval warfare. The once independent Viking raiders, who had operated in small bands, now faced formidable organized fleets, controlled by kings who had access to larger, more sophisticated ships. The Viking way of war, based on surprise, speed, and flexibility, was no longer effective against these new, well-coordinated forces. The Viking world itself was changing. The once proud raiders who had roamed the seas with their longships now found themselves settling in towns and villages, where the rhythms of everyday life became more important than the call to arms. The old ways of raiding and pillaging gave way to new forms of commerce, agriculture, and diplomacy. The shift from a warrior culture to a more settled agricultural society meant that the longships were no longer necessary for the survival and prosperity of the Viking people. Yet, despite this change, the longships would never be forgotten. Even as they were gradually replaced by larger, more advanced ships, the memory of the longship endured. The stories of Viking conquests and explorations told by bards and passed down through generations kept the spirit of the longship alive. The ships, with their sleek lines and powerful oars, were a symbol of the Vikings' spirit of adventure, independence, and boldness. The end of the longship era did not mean the end of the Viking legacy. Far from it. The Vikings, who had once sailed into distant lands with their dragon-headed ships, had left their mark on the world in more ways than one. Their influence could still be seen in the places they had settled, the trade routes they had established, and the cultures they had touched. The longships had carried the Vikings across the seas, but now the Vikings, through their descendants, would leave their mark in other ways. Through the cities they had built, the laws they had established, and the traditions they had passed down. And so, as the last of the longships were quietly retired, their great sails folded for the final time, the Viking spirit endured. It lived on in the stories, in the descendants of those who had once sailed across the seas, and in the very landscapes where the Vikings had left their mark. Though the ships were gone, the Vikings themselves were far from forgotten. Their legacy, like the memory of the longship, would sail on forever. When we look back upon the Viking Age, we are confronted with a world that is both fierce and fascinating, filled with contradictions and complexities. The Vikings are often remembered for their raids, swift, brutal attacks on the coasts of Europe, where the sight of a longship on the horizon brought with it fear and uncertainty. Yet the Vikings were much more than just warriors. They were artisans, traders, explorers, and even settlers. Their legacy, woven through the threads of time, paints a picture of a people whose influence shaped the world in unexpected and lasting ways. For many, the first image that comes to mind when they think of the Vikings is that of a fearsome raider, wild-eyed and armed with axe and sword, descending upon an unsuspecting monastery or village. The Vikings, with their fierce battle tactics and relentless pursuit of conquest, certainly earned this reputation. Their raids, which began in the late 8th century, spread across the British Isles, northern France, and parts of the Mediterranean. Their ships, fast and agile, allowed them to strike quickly, taking what they wanted before disappearing back into the sea. Yet, to define the Vikings only as raiders would be to miss the full picture. For the Vikings were also master craftsmen. They were builders of ships so fine that they could navigate both open seas and narrow rivers with equal ease. Their work as blacksmiths, woodworkers, and weavers created tools, weapons, and treasures that were highly prized. The intricate carvings that adorned their ships and shields told stories of gods and heroes, a testament to their artistic skills and the deep connection they felt to their myths and traditions. In their homes, in the longhouses where families gathered, Viking artisans created beautiful objects from metal, wood, and bone, each one a reflection of the culture's craftsmanship and pride. Beyond the battlefield and the workshop, the Vikings were also keen traders and adventurers. They established extensive trading networks that spanned from the shores of North America to the markets of the Byzantine Empire and the lands of the Arab world. The Vikings traded not only in goods like furs, amber, and iron, but also in ideas and technologies. They brought back spices, silks, and treasures from the East, and they shared their knowledge of shipbuilding, navigation, and warfare with the people they encountered along their travels. The Viking world, while based in Scandinavia, reached outward, touching and influencing far-flung corners of the globe. In fact, the Vikings were some of the earliest explorers, with their voyages to the farthest reaches of the North Atlantic. Their settlement in Iceland and Greenland, and their brief stay in Vinland, modern-day North America, long before other European explorers like Columbus, marks them as pioneers of the sea. They were not just raiders. They were adventurers, driven by curiosity and a desire to explore the unknown. The vast oceans, once feared by many, were navigated by Viking explorers who used the stars, the winds, and their intimate knowledge of the sea to find new lands and new opportunities. In history, however, the Vikings' impact was not limited to their role as conquerors and traders. Over time, as the Viking Age came to a close, their culture began to merge with the societies they had once raided. The Viking settlers, who established themselves in places like England, Ireland, Normandy, and Russia, became part of the fabric of those regions, contributing to the cultural and political landscape. The Danish kings who ruled England, for example, left a lasting imprint on the English monarchy, while Viking settlements in Normandy led to the establishment of a powerful duchy that would eventually produce the famous William the Conqueror. Despite the passage of time, the Viking legacy endures. Their influence can still be seen in the place names of England, France, and Scotland, where towns and rivers bear Viking names. Their stories, told in sagas, echo through the ages, immortalizing their gods, heroes, and adventures. The iconic image of the Viking warrior with his helmet and axe has become a symbol of bravery and adventure, one that resonates even today in popular culture. Yet, perhaps the most enduring legacy of the Vikings lies in their ability to adapt and evolve. The same people who once sailed the seas in search of riches and glory eventually became part of the very societies they had once raided. The Viking world, known for its violence and uncertainty, gave way to a more settled existence, one where agriculture, trade, and diplomacy took center stage. The Viking warrior, once feared across Europe, became a symbol of the evolving world, a world in which the old ways of raiding and conquering were replaced by new forms of power, culture, and influence. In the quiet moments of reflection as the fire flickers low in the longhouse, it is clear that the Vikings were more than just raiders. They were a people who changed the course of history, not just through their battles, but through their exploration, their craftsmanship, and their ability to adapt to a changing world. The Vikings left a mark on the world that cannot be erased, one that continues to echo through the centuries, reminding us of a time when boldness, adventure, and the will to forge a new destiny defined an entire people. As the fire softly crackles, casting long shadows on the walls of the longhouse, we find ourselves reflecting on a world that once was, a world filled with adventure, conquest, and discovery. The Vikings, though no longer sailing across the seas with their longships or raiding distant shores, left an enduring legacy that still echoes through the centuries. Their story, rich with both triumphs and tribulations, is woven into the very fabric of history, shaping the world in ways both large and subtle. The Vikings were more than just fierce warriors. They were explorers, builders, craftsmen and traders. They were people of ambition, of curiosity and of great adaptability. While their raids and conquests were often the first chapters of their story told by others, their true impact lies not just in their ability to conquer lands, but in their ability to create connections, to forge networks that spanned the known world and beyond. One of the most profound aspects of Viking influence lies in the culture they left behind. Through their travels, the Vikings bridged diverse civilizations, from the bustling markets of the Byzantine Empire to the distant shores of North America. They traded goods, ideas, and technologies, leaving an indelible mark on the cultures they encountered. Even today, echoes of their influence can be found in the place names, customs, and languages of the regions they once touched. In the lands where they settled, such as Normandy, England, and the Dnieper River regions of Eastern Europe, the Vikings didn't just settle, they became integral to the societies they helped shape. In England, the Danish influence was so profound that Viking rulers became kings of the land, blending Viking traditions with Anglo-Saxon governance. In Normandy, the Viking Rollo founded a dynasty that would produce William the Conqueror, who later changed the course of European history with the Norman conquest of England in 1066. But the Vikings' contributions weren't just political, they were social and cultural as well. They had a complex social structure where the values of honour, courage and loyalty were paramount. Their system of law, though far from perfect, established a framework of justice based on fairness and communal responsibility. The Viking thing, where decisions were made collectively, influenced the development of early democratic systems, highlighting their respect for individual voices and the importance of maintaining societal order. The Vikings also had a profound impact on the world of craftsmanship. Their longships, with their intricate designs and innovative construction, remain one of the most remarkable feats of maritime engineering. These ships were not just vessels for war or trade, they were symbols of Viking ingenuity, allowing them to traverse oceans, rivers, and even ice. The skills they developed in shipbuilding, blacksmithing, and weaving were passed down through generations, influencing not just their own societies, but the cultures they came into contact with. The Vikings were also deeply connected to the natural world, understanding the rhythms of the land, the sea, and the sky. Their navigational expertise, based on the stars, winds, and currents, was unmatched. They were the pioneers of the North Atlantic, and their voyages to places like Iceland, Greenland, and Vinland, long before other European explorers set sail, mark them as some of the world's first great explorers. Yet, perhaps the most lasting legacy of the Vikings is the spirit of adventure, exploration, and resilience they embodied. The world they inhabited was unforgiving, and their way of life was one of constant change, challenge, and adaptation. The Vikings were never afraid to step into the unknown, to test their limits, and to face whatever challenges came their way. Their journey was never just about conquest, it was about discovery. It was about creating something greater than themselves, carving a place in a world that often seemed too vast and unpredictable. As the Viking Age faded into history, so too did many of the old ways, raiding, pillaging, and the belief in the old gods. The world they once knew had changed, and the Vikings, like all peoples, adapted to the times. But their legacy remains, a legacy that lives on in the lands they once explored, the people they encountered, and the cultural and social foundations they left behind. Today, when we look back on the Vikings, we see not just warriors with axes and shields, but a people who helped shape the course of history through their ingenuity, their courage, and their resilience. Their influence can be seen in the very architecture of our cities, the structure of our laws, and even in the languages we speak. The Vikings are no longer a distant memory. They are a part of who we are. They have left their mark on the world, and that mark will never fade. As the embers of the fire slowly die out, it becomes clear the Vikings may have sailed off into the horizon, but their legacy lives on, woven into the fabric of our world, a testament to a people who dared to dream, to explore, and to leave their mark on history. As the fire in the longhouse flickers softly, casting gentle shadows on the walls, we are reminded once again of the world from which the Vikings came, a world both harsh and beautiful. The frozen landscape, where icy winds sweep across vast, snow-covered plains and towering mountains rise like silent sentinels, shaped the very soul of the Viking people. It is a landscape that could be unforgiving, where survival required strength, resilience, and an unyielding will to endure. Yet, for the Vikings, it was not just a place to survive, it was a place that inspired greatness. The world they inhabited was one of extremes, where summer was brief and fleeting, and winter stretched long and cold. The landscape was marked by glaciers, fjords, and endless forests, all blanketed in snow for much of the year. The cold, biting air was a constant presence, a reminder that nature itself was a force to be reckoned with. Yet, despite the challenges that the harsh climate posed, the Vikings thrived. They built their homes, their ships, and their society amidst this frozen world, carving out a life that, though difficult, was rich in culture, tradition, and strength. To live in such a land required an incredible toughness. The Vikings were not just survivors, they were masters of adaptation. They learned to use the land to their advantage, hunting the mighty elk, fishing the cold waters, and gathering what they could from the unforgiving environment. Their homes were built to withstand the cold, with thick timber walls and thatched roofs that kept the warmth of the fire inside and the chill of the world outside. The harsh winters, though long and dark, were met with the resilience of a people who knew that they could endure whatever came their way. Yet, despite the cold, there was beauty in the landscape, a beauty that the Vikings appreciated deeply. The stark white of the snow, the glimmer of ice on the fjords, the towering trees that reached toward the sky, all of these natural wonders were intertwined with their way of life. The northern lights, a dazzling display of green and purple across the night sky, were seen as a divine sign, a reminder that even in the most desolate places there was magic and wonder to be found. For the Vikings, the frozen landscape was not just a backdrop. It was a challenge to be met, a world to be tamed. It was a place that tested them, pushed them to their limits, and demanded the best of them. But it was also a place that gave them strength. The cold did not break them. It made them who they were, fierce, proud, and unrelenting in their pursuit of survival and glory. The Vikings learned to read the rhythms of nature, using the stars to navigate, the winds to guide their ships, and the earth beneath their feet to sustain them. Their long ships, crafted with the same care and precision as the tools they used for survival, carried them across icy waters to new lands, where they could face fresh challenges and forge new paths. The Viking spirit was not just about strength in battle, it was about the strength to endure, to push forward in the face of adversity, and to find a way to thrive, even when the world seemed too harsh to bear. In the end, it was their remarkable ability to adapt, to endure, and to find beauty in the struggle that allowed the Vikings to flourish in such a harsh world. The frozen landscape that surrounded them was not a place of defeat. It was a place where they carved out their existence, where they built a culture and a legacy that would echo through the ages. Their strength, resilience, and spirit of adventure were born from this land, and they carried it with them wherever they went, leaving their mark on the world in ways that are still felt today. As the fire in the longhouse burns down to embers, we are reminded of the incredible legacy of the Viking people, a legacy that was shaped by the frozen landscape they called home. Though the cold winds may still blow across the northern lands, the strength and spirit of the Vikings continue to inspire us, a testament to their enduring will to survive and thrive, no matter the odds. As the evening draws in and the warmth of the fire gently crackles in the longhouse, the story of the Vikings' resilience comes into focus, a tale not only of survival but of flourishing in a world that often seemed indifferent and harsh. In a land marked by endless winters, fierce battles, and unpredictable seas, the Vikings did not merely endure, they thrived. Their strength was not just physical, but forged in the fires of adversity, shaped by their deep connection to the world around them and their unrelenting will to push forward. The Viking world, as we have seen, was a place where the elements could easily overwhelm the unprepared. The relentless cold, the scarcity of resources during long winters, and the constant threat of war made life a challenge. Yet, in the face of these obstacles, the Vikings did not falter. Instead, they adapted, innovated, and found ways to not just survive, but to shape their destiny in ways few could imagine. Their resilience was built into every aspect of their culture, from their daily lives to their ability to explore and conquer far-off lands. The Longhouse itself was a testament to this resilience. It was not just a home, but a fortress against the cold, a symbol of how the Vikings had learned to work with the harshness of their environment rather than against it. The thick wooden walls, the warm hearth at the centre, and the strong roof that protected them from the fierce winter winds, each element reflected a people who knew how to withstand nature's forces and turn them to their advantage. The Vikings were not just skilled warriors. They were practical innovators. They built their long ships, designed to withstand both the open sea and the treacherous rivers, allowing them to explore new lands and trade far and wide. These ships were not just tools of war, they were symbols of Viking ingenuity and the desire to go further, to test the boundaries of the known world. The same spirit that drove their raids and their exploration also fueled their ability to adapt to new environments. When they landed in a new place, whether it was the shores of Iceland, the icy waters of Greenland, or the shores of North America, they didn't just settle, they transformed the land into something that could sustain them. The Vikings also excelled in trade, carving out routes across Europe, Asia, and beyond, exchanging furs, iron, and other goods with people from distant lands. Their resilience was evident in their ability to connect with diverse cultures, learning new methods of farming, craftsmanship, and governance. As they travelled, they not only brought goods back to their homeland, but also carried ideas that would enrich their society and influence future generations. But perhaps the most telling example of Viking resilience was their unyielding spirit in the face of change. As Christianity slowly spread through their lands, replacing the old gods with new beliefs, the Vikings did not simply disappear or resist for the sake of resistance. Many embraced the change, incorporating the new religion into their lives, while maintaining the core values that defined them: strength, honor, and loyalty. The transformation from a society built on raiding and conquest to one focused on settlement, trade, and diplomacy did not break the Viking spirit. Instead, it reshaped it, allowing them to survive and adapt in a rapidly changing world. In the quiet of the longhouse, as the last embers of the fire glow softly, it becomes clear that Viking resilience was not just about enduring hardship. It was about growing stronger because of it. The Vikings faced obstacles that would have broken lesser peoples, yet they not only survived, but laid the foundation for the world we know today. Their legacy is not just in the lands they conquered or the battles they fought. It is in the enduring spirit they carried with them, the spirit that saw opportunity where others saw despair, that embraced change rather than fearing it, and that found strength in the face of the harshest trials. The Viking story is one of perseverance, of facing the unknown with a steady hand and an unflinching heart. It is a story of resilience, not just surviving in a challenging world, but transforming that world to leave a legacy that would echo through time. The Vikings may have sailed off into history, but the resilience they embodied, the lessons they taught, live on in the world we inhabit today. As the longhouse settles into quiet warmth, the flickering of the fire at its heart becomes a symbol of much more than just light and warmth. For the Vikings, fire was not merely a tool for survival, it was a living, breathing force, a sacred element that connected them to the earth, the gods, and the very essence of life itself. The flames that danced in the hearth were a reflection of the Viking spirit, fierce, enduring, and unyielding. The eternal fire, both in the hearth and in their hearts, was a constant reminder that the Viking flame would never go out. In the Viking world, the fire in the longhouse was not just for cooking or keeping warm, it was the lifeblood of the home. It brought light to the darkness of the long cold winters and warmth to the frozen land. The hearth was central to Viking life. It was where families gathered, where stories were told, where food was shared, and where bonds were forged. The fire in the hearth was constant, a source of comfort, a place where the family came together after a day of hard work or battle. And it was always tended to, never allowed to die out. In every home, the hearth fire was kept alive, not just to fend off the cold, but as a mark of the family's vitality, their enduring strength, and their connection to the world around them. But fire, to the Vikings, was more than just a practical necessity. It was also a deeply symbolic force. The flames represented life, energy, and transformation. Fire could destroy, but it also had the power to create, to renew, and to sustain. Just as fire consumed the wood in the hearth, so too did it purify, providing warmth and sustenance in equal measure. The Viking warriors, who had often seen the flames of battle, understood this dual nature of fire, the way it could both forge and destroy. It was a reflection of their own way of life, fierce and full of intensity, but also capable of growth, creation, and rebirth. The eternal fire also had a spiritual significance in Viking culture. The flames were seen as a symbol of the gods themselves. Odin, the All-Father, who was associated with wisdom and sacrifice, was said to dwell in the flames of knowledge. Freyr, the god of fertility and prosperity, was said to bring warmth to the earth through his connection to fire. The flames were also believed to have a connection to the afterlife, particularly to the Great Hall of Valhalla, where the fallen warriors feasted and fought under the watchful eyes of the gods. In their minds, the fire was the bridge between the mortal and divine realms, a living symbol of the connection between the world of men and the world of gods. The fire also held a deeper, more personal meaning. It was the warmth of the hearth, the comfort of home, that kept the Viking spirit alive through the harsh winters. When the long, dark nights seemed endless, the fire in the hearth reminded them that warmth would return, that the light would shine once again. It was a constant presence, unwavering and vital to their way of life. The flames served as a reminder of their resilience, their ability to endure even the coldest and darkest of times. Just as the fire never went out in the longhouse, so too did the Viking spirit remain unextinguished, no matter what the world threw their way. In times of hardship, when the winds howled and the cold bit deep into the bones, the Viking people would gather around the fire, drawing strength from its warmth. The fire brought people together, offering a place of solace and connection. The Vikings knew that as long as the fire burned, they would endure. They were a people of flame, fierce, enduring, and full of life. The fire symbolized their undying spirit, a reminder that no matter how harsh the world may be, they would always rise again, like the flames that never failed to flicker and burn. The Vikings, in their travels and conquests, brought their love for fire with them. In every place they settled, they built their homes around the hearth, ensuring that the flame would always burn, that it would never die out. From Iceland to Greenland, from the shores of Normandy to the streets of York, the Vikings spread the warmth of their hearths, carrying with them the spirit of the eternal fire. The fire, like the Viking people themselves, would never be extinguished. It would live on, burning bright, through the generations and across the ages. As the fire in the longhouse burns low, the flickering embers remind us that the Viking spirit too endures. Though the long ships no longer sail the seas, and the battles are fought no more, the flame of the Viking people remains. It burns in the hearts of those who remember their legacy, who honor the values of courage, strength, and resilience that they embodied. The eternal fire is not just a thing of the past, It is a living, breathing part of who we are, a reminder of a time when the world was shaped by the flames of Viking hearts. As the winds of change swept across the lands once ruled by the Vikings, a quiet figure stood alone, holding on to the threads of a world that was quickly fading into the past. This was the last of the Vikings, no longer the raiders and explorers who had once sailed the seas, but a man or woman who found themselves caught between two worlds, the ancient ways of their forefathers and the new, emerging world around them. The world that had been shaped by the Vikings, from their powerful longships to their fierce sense of independence, was now evolving, and with it, the very essence of their culture was slowly slipping away. The Viking Age, with its warriors, its gods, and its great voyages, was no longer the defining force of the North. The lands that had once felt the touch of the Viking hand were now under the rule of monarchs and kingdoms. Christianity had taken root, and the old gods of Odin and Thor were being replaced by new beliefs. The world was changing, and for the last Viking the battle was no longer one of conquest or exploration, but of preservation. How could one hold on to a legacy when the very world that had nurtured it was slipping through their fingers? The last Viking knew that their way of life could not endure forever. The great longships, once the pride of the Viking people, had been replaced by larger, more powerful vessels. The shield walls that had once struck fear into the hearts of their enemies had given way to armies of knights and men-at-arms, organized and disciplined. Even the simple, everyday practices of the Vikings, farming, trading and crafting, were being reshaped by new technologies and new ways of living. But still, in the quiet of the longhouse, the last Viking held onto the old ways, clinging to the knowledge, the traditions and the stories that had defined their people. The fire in the hearth, the centerpiece of the Viking home, burned steadily, casting a warm glow. It was a symbol of the unbroken spirit of the Viking people. In the shadows of the longhouse, where the wind could not reach, the last Viking would sit, surrounded by relics of the past, carved shields, intricate tools, and the faded banners of their ancestors. They would speak softly to the few who still gathered to listen, telling tales of the gods, of great battles, and of far-off lands. These stories, passed down through generations, were more than just memories. They were the heartbeat of Viking culture, kept alive by the last of the old bloodline. Yet even as they tried to preserve the old ways, the last Viking knew that change was inevitable. The great halls of Valhalla, the realms of the gods, seemed a distant dream in a world that no longer believed in them. But the warrior spirit, the courage that had once driven the Vikings to sail across the seas, still burned brightly within them. They knew that their fight was no longer one of war or conquest. It was a fight to keep the soul of the Viking alive, to ensure that the stories, the values, and the way of life would not be forgotten. The last Viking was not alone, however. There were others who too felt the pull of the past. In the corners of the world where the old Viking blood still ran deep, there were whispers of the old gods, songs sung to the rhythm of the oar, and fires that still burned brightly through the long, dark winters. The legacy of the Vikings, while no longer the dominant force it once was, lived on in the hearts of those who carried it forward. And the last Viking, though they knew that their time was coming to an end, understood that their legacy would endure, not in the shields and swords of battle, but in the stories passed down to the next generation. The last Viking looked out over the land, the world they had once known, and saw how much it had changed. The winds of time had shifted, and with them the old ways had begun to fade into history, but the Viking spirit, like the fire in the hearth, could not be extinguished. It lived on in the hearts of those who still honoured their past, who carried the lessons of the Viking Age with them into a new world. And so, as the fire flickered one last time in the longhouse, the last Viking understood that while the age of the Viking raiders was over, their legacy would live on. The world may have changed, but the spirit of the Vikings, their courage, their resilience, and their unyielding will to explore and conquer would never fade. It would endure, not just in the pages of history, but in the hearts of those who still remembered, still honoured, and still believed in the eternal fire of the Viking spirit. As the last embers of the fire glow softly in the hearth, the Viking world, so full of strength, adventure, and uncertainty, seems to quiet down. The longships no longer sail the open seas. The battles that once shaped the fate of nations are now part of distant history. The winds that once carried the mighty Viking warriors to lands both near and far have faded, replaced by the gentle breath of time itself. Yet, even as the Viking Age becomes a chapter in the grand book of history, the spirit of those fierce, resilient people lives on, woven into the stories, the legacy, and the very soul of the world. The frozen landscapes that the Vikings once called home are still there, silent and eternal. The mountains, the forests, and the fjords remain as they have for centuries, unchanged by the passage of time. The same cold winds that once bit at the skin of the Viking warriors now blow across the snow-covered ground, carrying with them the whispers of a people who once roamed these lands, carving their mark upon the world. The world may have changed, but the land, the essence of the Vikings, remains. Yet, in the quiet moments of reflection, it becomes clear that the Vikings are not truly gone. They live on, not just in the distant past, but in the stories they left behind. Their adventures, their struggles, their victories and their failures continue to echo through the ages. The sagas, those great stories of gods and men, warriors and explorers, have survived the centuries, passed down from generation to generation, keeping the Viking spirit alive in the hearts of those who listen. These stories, once told around the fire in the longhouse, now reach across time and space, connecting us to the world of the Vikings in a way that transcends history. The Vikings may no longer walk the earth, but their legacy is far from forgotten. In the place names that dot the maps of Europe and beyond, in the trade routes they forged, and in the very fabric of the cultures they encountered, their influence endures. From the shores of England to the streets of Paris, from the lands of the Russ to the settlements in North America, the Vikings left a lasting imprint on the world. Their strength, their creativity, and their unyielding will to explore and conquer continue to inspire us. A reminder of what it means to face the unknown with courage, to push the boundaries of what is possible, and to build a legacy that will endure through the ages. And even as we close the chapter on the Viking Age, we must remember that their story is not just a tale of raiders and conquerors. It is a story of resilience, of the ability to adapt and change, of the wisdom to learn from the world and make it their own. The Vikings were not just a people of war. They were a people of creation, of exploration, and of connection. They navigated the seas, yes, but they also navigated the complexities of life, finding ways to build communities, trade with distant lands, and shape their future in a world that was constantly changing. As the night deepens, the Viking world seems both distant and familiar. The fire in the hearth flickers gently, a reminder that even as time moves on, the warmth of the past still lingers. The world may have moved on from the age of the Vikings, but their legacy, like the fire that never fully fades, is eternal. In the stories we tell, in the values we carry, and in the spirit of adventure that still stirs within us, the Vikings remain. And so, as the last of the embers burn out and the world outside falls silent, we are left with the understanding that though the Viking Age has passed, its essence will never be extinguished. It lives on in the stories we share, the lands they explored, and the legacy they built, a legacy that, like the eternal flame in the heart of the Longhouse, continues to burn brightly in the hearts of those who remember, who honour, and who carry it forward.